It's Plat Overwatch episode 128, and guess what? You survived the off-season. Well done, you did it. We finally got the sweet, sweet manna from heaven, which was video games. We could watch some video games this week. New video games, in fact. I got Custa, Avast, Reinforced, fresh off the Power Rankings episode, which have been, you know, incredibly boomed right from the beginning. No?
Not our fault. Not our fault. It's not our fault that the teams decided to suck on stage, you know? So I hold them personally accountable.
Did they suck, or did they step up? I guess we'll talk
Dallas
about that later.
on Friday.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later, I guess. And Jonathan, you've been putting in work, huh? You've been really slaving away this week, working on the Overwatch League.
Real tough. Dude, co-streaming is the easiest bullshit ever. It's such a cakewalk. It's unbelievable. Like, dude, Custa, he has to wake up at like 7 a.m. He has to drive, like commute an hour to Irvine. He has to like get makeup ready. He has to rehearse. They have to rehearse twice. Then they have to wait for production. They start a show at noon. He has to do the show for like 6 hours. Then they have to like talk about the next day. He has to drive back. He's somewhere like 8. That's like a solid like 13-hour workday. I just showed up. I got COVID, showed up at noon, turned on the stream, giggled for a bit, leashed off of Avast fellow members, and then just tuned out. And people loved it. It was great. Dude, it's less rewarding, but man, co-streaming is pretty comfy, man. It's pretty good.
It is. It's mad as well. And all of Custa's segments, people just walk away and get their drinks during that period of time anyway.
I'm just an ad break. I'm going to glorified ad break at this point.
I mean, co-stream is just as easy as you make it, Johnny. So, you know, maybe once you get with the big leagues, okay? Once you start producing the real segments, okay? True. Once you start having the keys to success and the wheel and various other segments.
All of the things that Solomon does, not you.
But I'm still the executive producer, so I create the direction for it.
This morning I went to Fiverr, and we're gonna get a Minecraft studio set up. So I'm working with some guy from Southeast Asia. So we're working.
You're gonna take the Minecraft studio setup, dude. I'll see you in court. I'll see you in Minecraft.
I'm building my own Minecraft arena. Okay, it's not yours. Building my own.
All right, so we saw the first games of the season. It was sprinkled with some awesome games, some potential bread bowls happening, some live events as well. If you're just looking, and also none of the Eastern teams actually played, so all of the other weekends are going to be super jam-packed compared to this. This was almost like a light, fresh beginning for those people over in the Western time zones. What were your first impressions of 5v5 actually being played and OWL in general? Is it, you know, the quality of it, the enjoyment of it being back, the hype surrounding it, the viewership, all of that kind of stuff? 5v5 first, though. I want to nail into 5v5. Did you actually like what was being broadcast? Because Jonathan, I know you were on my co-stream and you said, I actually am watching these first few matches with some level of nervousness because you just don't know how good 5v5 is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all came into this season with hopium. It was hopium, okay? I work for the league, get paid by the league. I want it to succeed. I love the game. I love this game, and I want nothing more than for it to succeed. And despite me, you know, tweeting with Seagull that, you know, we want 5v5, 5v5 is going to make the game better, it has potential, and me actually looking at the beta footage and saying, this is the Overwatch I fell in love with people trading kills, a lot of mechanical skill. I had no idea what it was going to look like in an Overwatch League setting, in a competitive format with professional teams going head-to-head. Is the tempo going to be like unwatchable? Is it going to be too fast? Are we going to lose some of this like team chemistry stuff between like different tanks and ability usage, stuff like that? Is it just going to be like a clown fiesta? I didn't know, but honestly, I kind of dig it. I think it's fun. I think it's really fun. I'm positively surprised, and I'm really looking forward to see more Overwatch 2 because I think it's really interesting to follow.
Did you dig it, Custa?
I think I have some of the similar concerns that Johnny have, and I don't think I was alleviated off of this weekend because there were some weird matches that we watched, and there was like, you can tell that these teams haven't really nailed everything down, and it feels like some of the matches were just like people are all over the place, because I think the idea of like you have these heavy chokes and you just have a very simple I guess flow chart of like, do we have these ultimates and we go, like that doesn't really exist as much in 5v5 because it feels like ultimates are so sparse, and like the push modes and some of these new modes are more chaotic. So I think when you saw like good Overwatch being played, like I think watching Dallas Fuel their second match, like you could see that there was a rhyme and a reason to the chaos a little bit. And I think that made me feel better because there was some sick plays in that match.
Oh, look, someone else has their cat too. He's got his cat. My cat's in my lap right now, actually.
Doing? Bond villains, 2 of them.
Yeah, we do actually have a Bond villain energy. I think myself for 5v5, I like where it's gone. It feels like the broadcast also, you get less of those like moments, where you have like 2 Symmetra shields and like grabs and the stuff where it's just like pure chaos like in front of your eyes. But also it is still at times pure chaos upon viewing it. It is tough as someone that literally that was casting and did co-streaming later and have been watching it for a bit. It does feel like there is an adjustment to be made for how fast the game is right now currently. That might change as like time goes on and we had the metas change a bit, but right now the game is fucking fast. The game is really fast, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's like very different. And especially the game modes like push, it's a very different way Overwatch is played. So, but overall I'm positive. I like what I'm seeing. I enjoy that. There's also, I think logistically, 1 less player on both sides is nice. 1 less tank is kind of nice. It definitely feels like the game is not solved at all.
No, I would agree with that. But also, it feels like individuals have a lot of freedom. I was loving watching like pop-off moments from the flex supports, which, I was led to believe that flex supports were a hunted breed. They were like prey in Overwatch 2. And actually, we saw some of our best moments from them. And then the DPS players as well were not... I didn't ever feel like they were completely... Well, maybe not ever. Ever might be too strong of a word. But it felt like most of the time they weren't completely controlling the tempo, but they had some insane moments that I think the casual viewer just loves watching those kind of things. Some mad Genji blade that comes out, or proper runs around on Tracer and kills everybody, etc. But it definitely wasn't more watchable. I think the idea that like removing a player would make everything more understandable to the casual viewer. I was doing a co-stream, and I mean, yeah, this was just nasty. I was doing a co-stream, and a lot of the viewers were like, "Hey, I'm here just because you've done some Valorant stuff before," and I was tuning in to see Overwatch League. What the fuck is going on? I was like, yeah, I can't really explain that to you. But I don't think it was any more messy than the beginning of any meta that we had last year. At the beginning of those metas where we had big patch changes, I always felt like you were, as someone watching the broadcast for the first time, really trying to like play catch up to the teams and figure out what the meta was and figure out which plays were good and which positions people should be playing and that kind of stuff. So it wasn't that bad. However, the Overwatch League broadcast did kind of fucking blow at the beginning. It did lag out and stutter and play at 30 FPS for the entire day, which, considering, I want to put this into context, 1.5 million viewers for that first day when they did drops as a peak is fucking crazy. I'm not talking Overwatch League at the moment. That's just a whole Overwatch thing. Like Valorant, for example, got 1.7 million peak. So we're talking really similar values. And then the peak for the opening day was higher than the peak for the opening day last year, too. Which is still, I mean, those are still really good numbers that Overwatch League is pulling in. But there were some dodgy moments that the first impressions just kind of got rolled, I think, a little bit. But it definitely improved throughout the week.
I think part of that was because as well, like I had mentioned in my co-stream, but the setup they currently have, they'll have to elucidate those that haven't tuned in to twitch.tv/Avast, to those that haven't tuned in there, is that there is currently they're working with Dome, which is based out of Toronto, and they currently take the feeds from the game, send it to a production studio in Toronto, and then those feeds are produced and then they're sent back. So like there are like some multi-step. Does it excuse the quality? No. In fact, I would say that's even more heinous because it feels like if you know this is what you're going to be working with, you should be prepped beforehand to like kind of deal with these various logistical issues. But that is probably one of the big reasons why they're having problems. But obviously, who really knows unless you were one of the producers on it? But I imagine that probably led into it. But I do feel like the quality issues were kind of bad for the first weekend of your brand new game. I do think it got a lot better went on. But overall, besides from like an actual production quality standpoint, I liked the flow of the broadcast. I liked what was actually happening on the broadcast. I just felt like it was just marred by these production issues.
Yeah, Custa was having fun in the Watchpoint wagon.
Well, it was great for us, like, because we have a clean feed. Like, so we're sitting there thinking everyone's just freaking out on Twitter. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. I'm getting silky smooth 60 FPS in this wagon right here. But like,
you're the only person, Scott. You're the only person.
You guys should just join me in the wagon is the moral of the story. No, but like, it's kind of frustrating seeing like, because after we did our first pre-show and the matches are starting, obviously everyone's celebrating. We got our first pre-show done. It didn't catch on fire. Like, we're walking through the campus and they have all the videos up, and I'm watching like the YouTube wheel like spin as I'm walking past. I'm like, that can't be good. And then like, yeah, it was very low FPS when it like actually did come out. So it's frustrating. It's something that like is just so behind the scenes of me and like anything that I understand. So I don't really understand, so I can't speak to it. But it's definitely like, it's disappointing when it feels like we have so much excitement around the game, but it feels like the league hasn't matched that with like putting up barriers to make sure that it doesn't fall flat. Because as Josh said, like we had so many new people tune in just because they want to beta drops. They want to try something. They haven't watched the league in like 4 years or 3 years. And then this is their first impression. They're just going to stop, right? Like they'll just leave and they won't come back. And that sucks. I think we definitely lost some people with that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, obviously it sucks to have low FPS in the first place, like low frame rate. Like it's kind of, unacceptable for like a major esport. But I think the big disappointment, like what Custa said, like this was a big week for us. This was supposed to be the first showing of Overwatch 2. A huge year for Overwatch League as well to prove itself now because COVID's gone, right? So this is supposed to be Overwatch League getting back.
Johnny says COVID's gone as he misses the weekend due to COVID.
Yeah, you're finally American. You're finally American, Johnny. You've done it. You can get your green card now.
What I'm trying to say is, okay, people out here are running like NBA playoffs and like the Super Bowl and shit. It's not the same as it was in like 2020, okay? Like we're finally getting back to the norm, okay? I'm the last case, hopefully. I'm not going to be the last case, but hopefully.
In the world?
I'm joking. But you get what I mean. Like for the most part, like COVID, we found a way as a civilized community to work around it.
Speak for yourself. I'm not part of any civilized community.
Boosters, the safe distancing, all this. Like we've started to navigate our way around a pandemic for the most part, to the point where we can actually put on some pretty cool stuff. So this was supposed to be a huge year for the league, like us finally getting back into the groove and not being forced to do all this remote stuff. So, I think I share Custa's, to get back to my point. I think I share a lot of what Custa said about like the disappointment for all these new viewers tuning in, because this was a huge week for us. Like you said, Sideshow, 1.5 million viewers on the Twitch category. And of course, not a ton of those viewers stayed because they wanted their beta key, and then they got out because they wanted to try out the game and they wanted to try it out themselves. But that got us some new eyeballs on the game. They brought in some new fans, some new viewers to check out what the Overwatch League was all about. And in week one, the product just like the frame rate didn't live up to expectations, and it made the product like significantly worse to follow, etc. Like a large reason why I think the product was so hard to follow, like it was so hard to watch the game in a higher tempo 5 versus 5 setting, was because the frame rate was off. Like you need 60 FPS to really, you need everything to help out to make the viewing experience as seamless as possible. And it just wasn't that. So in many ways, yeah, it was pretty disappointing to see that all these new viewers tuned in and was like, well, I can't watch this. I'll just go back and watch my favorite streamers or like Valorant or like whatever game, because I can't really watch this.
The when I was doing a co-stream, people were like, "Go and watch the French stream. Go and watch the Korean stream." And I'm like hopping from different language streams to try and find the frame rate, because there was something weird going on at the very core of it. I want to talk a little bit about the co-stream and stuff that they've got in store as well, because I'm sure me and Avast will have some stuff to discuss about that. But before that as well, viewership actually. So I mentioned that the viewership was higher than last year's first day peak, which is that's a cool thing, that the product continues to grow. And if you actually look at graphs of Overwatch League, it is not going down. Year on year, it does go up. Even when 2020, it took a massive tumble off a cliff, but 2021 got back onto that general upward trend that you would expect even based on the 2019 viewership. So all things pointing good. At the same time, though, I can't help but think that with drops active for Overwatch 2, I was really expecting that viewership number to blow it out the park. And instead, it was just like fractionally higher than last year. And I don't understand the reason for that, really, because the drops when they were on general streamer channels went dumb hard mega stupid. Is it just because people don't give a shit about Overwatch 2 anymore? Is it because it wasn't marketed properly? Why the hell did the drops not actually correlate to much higher viewership this time?
I think it's a combination of multiple things. Like, I think the biggest one is that I know that we had drops this weekend because, I'm a part of the community. If you're not a part of like Overwatch League, were you aware that there were drops this weekend for the opening matches? Not really. It hasn't been communicated that much. In my opinion, it doesn't feel like it's been pushed.
I don't think it was even on the Overwatch 1 launcher. I don't think there was any advertisement there at all.
They just didn't promote that beta key access like that big. Plus, anyone that really wanted a key, they already had a key because they did it during the beta drops thing that was actually marketed well because streamers are promoting it and stuff like that, right? Like it feels like people just aren't aware. And like going onto YouTube as well, a lot of people, you're not seeing the beta drop happen, right? Like connect your YouTube account and just like wait. Like a lot of people don't get their drops off of YouTube in the same way that they get it off of Twitch. So I think obviously the number was inflated because we had drops and that there were a lot of people that came in for that. But I would say a large majority of people who probably wanted it and they would be aware, they would have watched it on Twitch if we had drops because it would have made more sense and they would have seen the high number. But on YouTube, I don't think they had that natural marketing. And I think that's where it fell off.
Yeah. It's quite incredible, the difference between like 1.5 million peak and then, what was it, like 117 or something?
Well, that's Twitch and YouTube, right? Like, that's just the YouTube deal in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, it really is. And yeah,
I think
Overwatch
the marketing is one of the worst parts of it, by the way, Josh. I want to add to that. The marketing is where the true failure of this is right now. By the way, right now, on this day, the day we're recording, I'm just going to give a date. It is the 9th. It is the 9th of May, just to let you guys know. So there is currently a like 30,000 upvoted thread on r/gaming, which I know is the center of all gaming universe, of course. But the point being, if you go look at this, it's literally it's a thread about Overwatch 2 and how people are like, like various impressions. And so many comments in that thread literally don't even know that Overwatch 2 PvE is going to be free if you're on Overwatch 1. Like they simply don't, like the actual mechanics of the rollout for Overwatch 2 are still a mystery. They are still shrouded in a Team 4 miasma of like what the fuck is happening. Like people don't know. They literally do not know what's happening with the game. Well, like for example, if you look at like the marketing for similar titles, like for example Valorant, but obviously like other games are coming out, like they're shoving it down your fucking throat. Like what is happening? Like they're letting you know everywhere. Like here's what's going on. And people still don't fucking. Yeah, this is a funny meme. By the way. This is a very funny meme. But the actual comments of this thread are people literally just still not knowing. Like even after so many months of like this and like the beta rolling out, they still don't know what's happening. Like how does the Overwatch 2 rollout work? They don't. There people are like, you want us to pay for this, not knowing that PvE is going to be free.
Yeah. Literally, no.
Or PvP.
No, they don't want you to pay for it.
They don't want you, but people don't know. So, like, to me, the worst failure of this is, like, yes, the YouTube, obviously, YouTube is still a barrier for entry. And I think, like, the Twitch stream where people got a lot of their keys, like Scott talked about earlier, is a big part of it. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest problem here still revolves around marketing and overall eyes looking at both Overwatch 2, like, understanding what's happening, but also the league in general.
Yeah.
So like it seems to be more to me a marketing failure than it is anything else.
Because I had a lot of fun watching this weekend. I mean, I the actual product itself, very entertaining. And I think the way that it's broadcast as well, in terms of like you were talking, Connor, about, the way that it flows and like the desk feel is so casual and enjoyable compared to, stiff suit. Let's take a look at that replay from round 2 or whatever it is. Like, I think it's a fun watch, but it's, just getting the eyeballs on it is difficult.
Also,
go on.
Sorry, I wanted to ask about the viewership, about the YouTube stream as well. How much do you actually factor that in, being YouTube and not Twitch? Because I think it's a pretty interesting question. Like, do you think that at this point, like being on YouTube, it's less discoverable in general? And if you really want to find the Overwatch League YouTube stream, you have to pretty much dig for it and be very interested. Like, Overwatch League is not going to pop up on your feed just like randomly, just like, hey, check out the Overwatch League, or like, hey, my friends are watching Overwatch League on Twitch. Twitch is way easier to just like randomly stumble upon the Overwatch League. Maybe it's promoted on the front page, etc.
Yeah, but also
the category as well will rise with the Overwatch League viewership. So, like, do we attribute some of the viewership not being quite there to us broadcasting on YouTube, like isolated by ourselves?
Of course that's the case. But I'm comparing it to last year, which was also on YouTube. And
Sure.
So, and also,
But you're talking about the beta key drops.
The Overwatch League has to go where the broadcast rights money is. You can't just. I had a bunch of people tweeting at me today or yesterday, being like, "The Overwatch League needs," as if I have any fucking power in the discussion.
You don't even work here anymore.
I don't even work there anymore. They tweeting at me saying Overwatch League needs to return to Twitch if it wants to recapture its cultural identity or in the zeitgeist or whatever the fuck they were tweeting. And it's like, dude, they were on Twitch. YouTube offered more money after the Twitch deal. They realized it wasn't working, so they went to YouTube where the money is. You can't like they can't pick and choose if the money isn't there. So I think it's a bit of a moot point, honestly. You just have to try and make it work as best you can within the situation you're in. I do want to talk though a bit about the co-streaming stuff because I had a lot of fun finally being able to broadcast the game. I know that Connor didn't because he wasn't around for that first day. They only offered it for one day in this entire qualifier run.
Wait,
so
really?
Yeah,
Yes, it's only one day.
Out of 4 weeks of the kickoff clash qualifiers, only that first day is being offered where you can co-stream with the game. And I talked to Sean Miller about it as well, and maybe it'll get changed in the future. So yeah, that was a bit of a fuck up, but the actual viewership there was pretty promising. I did earn $25. Oh yeah, and I had to private the VOD afterwards and wasn't allowed to run ads on it as well. So that's pretty cool. But
sweet co-stream.
Still huge amounts of red tape restrictions, massive amounts of that, and very poor monetization options in general. Like I said, I earned $25 doing like 6 hours of co-streaming. But the actual, like, if they get that kind of shit sorted out, the audience was there, which was surprising to me. I really thought I would be broadcasting to like 600 people because I've never run a live broadcast on my YouTube channel before. But that audience did port over to some degree. I mean, to a larger degree, actually. I had more viewers when I did it on YouTube than I did on Twitch by like 600, something like that. But it's just fucking sewn up in red tape. It's just every little piece of it. I felt ribboned up.
I think it's just because the Overwatch audience is used to being disappointed that it's not on Twitch, and then they're just begrudgingly heading over to YouTube, right? Like, yeah, your fans are aware of this kind of thing, and I completely agree with Johnny that like the biggest issue is discoverability. Unless you have word of mouth, or you follow someone, or there is some other reason that you get directed to the YouTube, it's just impossible to find, and that's the problem.
We were planning to run like a Plat chat co-stream for the opening weekend and, have a couple of people, live couch, this kind of stuff that we do for Valorant. That would have been awesome. That would have been a lot of fun. In fact, we had theorized, maybe we go down to San Antonio and do it like, where we could, have a player on or a fan on or something like that. And then they offered it for one day. And it's like, well, can't justify running something like that. But maybe in the future they'll change it and we'll actually have like a proper co-streaming system. What did you think, little fake commentator Andy over there?
Fake commentator Andy?
Yeah, you were moonlighting as a commentator and just rejected your co-streaming roots.
What can I say? I mean, sometimes you just show up, do the first live event in 2 years after not working any official Overwatch League broadcasts. What can you do? What can you do, I mean, overall, I think we had this conversation when we were doing the Austin co-stream between Kurt and myself and stuff, but pretty much like, as long as it's one day, I'm going to be honest, I'm not even going to bother with it. It's like, it's simply not worth the hassle for people that are already established on Twitch. And I think you're kind of like outside of the norm, Josh, because of the fact that your audience will go, you could fucking put paint on a wall and they'll watch it dry because they love watching you do stupid shit, So like you kind of have like a particular draw and you already have like an established YouTube channel, at least on top of that, even if you don't do like live streams.
Yeah,
so
I've abandoned the YouTube frogs for many months though.
Oh, well, that's fair. Okay, well, either way, the point being is like and also we've had some Plat chat crossover for a long time on YouTube. Sure. So like there is some cross-pollination with that. I just personally think right now currently the restrictions are too much and they just need to be formatted. Really the most base thing, it just needs to go for more. They just need to allow to do it for more days. And that's like the most basic thing they need to do first. But that's how I feel about it currently as someone that obviously co-streams a lot. I will probably never touch the feature unless it's expanded significantly to where you could do a lot more. But it's nice that they're at least open to trying to do it. But I feel like they just have to, be more flexible.
No, it is good that they're making roads in that kind of way. They just still feel like they're 2-3 years behind the cutting edge of what's going on. But we did get the best part of this entire opening weekend was the part that you were most heavily involved in, Connor. But it wasn't because of you. It was because it was a live event.
It was because of me. It was because of me, actually.
It was the battle for Texas was fucking sick. It was easily my favorite part of the entire weekend. Just the energy of having a crowd again live. I don't know. It just makes it so different. It felt like there was
tweeted out, allow yourself to hope, or allow yourself to be hopeful. And I was like, live audience.
Well, presumably there'll be tons more. Well, maybe not tons more. That might be overselling it a bit. But I would imagine most of the like tournaments and the mid-season stuff and the playoffs, etc., should be like live events with a live audience, right? And then presumably people will be running more of these because this one was so successful.
It was great. I mean, they had 2,000 people in the venue.
Really?
Which is crazy. Yes. I did not think 2,000.
Well, they estimate. They said they for sure had 1,200, but they were expecting between like 1,200 2,000. And I think towards the end of it was like close to 2,000. So
that's about for anyone who's wondering. That's about 4 times more than the Blizzard Arena. So I thought this place was about the same as the Blizzard Arena.
No, it's way bigger.
Way bigger.
Yeah, it's really, really big. The venue itself is really cool, actually. I'm hoping they do more events there potentially for like Texas stuff. Not that I don't. Oh, there I am. And then, but I do think that is a very, very cool event to be back. And it's clear that there is still the other interesting part to me about this too is that they have that many people, and this is in San Antonio. This wasn't in Houston or Dallas where these teams are based at. This and Texas is a very big state. This is like hours away from like those sort of cities, And people were still out there, like in a very significant way. Dude, Cat, you got to get out of here, bro. You got it. Come here.
Did you enjoy working on the broadcast? It was a good experience.
I mean, I had like obviously I've been tangentially related to the broadcast for many years now, and like worked contenders in 2019 and like World Cup and stuff. So like it's not like I've never done broadcast stuff before, obviously, and dealt with the producers of the league and stuff, but. It was nice to actually officially do an event. I love doing it. Broadcast is still like my passion in many ways. It's just because the industry is plainly fucked. I like kind of like stay away from it. And for like my own sanity.
It is the most Overwatch League thing ever that the official commentators that have just been added in and some of the, most long-standing people like Midge and Matt are in separate rooms in their own homes. And the only big live event was done by people who aren't working full-time as commentators. I just thought that was so fucking hilariously Overwatch League, but it made for a good show.
Good. It was really fun. I think the crowd energy is great. There's still obviously interest for the crowd. They had Esports Engine as like the on-site producers, and that company is really, really fantastic. Like great guys. They've all been like an XMLG group and stuff like that. Like they know what the fuck they're doing. They run the CDL production and they're doing a lot of the Overwatch League stuff potentially this year. And they do I think they do the Halo series stuff as well. But yeah, they got a lot of stuff in the belt. They're great. Really fantastic. The venue is good. Like I said, the interest is there. Houston and Dallas both are like, they want to be running live events in their home market. Like everyone wants to be running live events again, especially the Texas teams. It was sick. It was sick to be back. And it's clear that there is interest from people to go watch Overwatch. They want to go watch Overwatch, especially even if the franchise model, I wouldn't say has been like the most perfect success. It is clear that after these years, there's at least been some establishing of this like market idea for certain areas.
And that continues to like surprise me, and that is why this event was such a nice reminder that what the Overwatch League actually could be. Because if we hadn't had this event, we would have just like gone on like lulling on watching the broadcast, like like remote Overwatch League, this is what we do, like this is gonna be the rest of the season, the regular season, whatever. But this event actually once more reminded us of how great Arena Overwatch League can be, and that there, like you said, Avast, there is an existing audience that desperately want to go and watch the Overwatch League. I tweeted about this, and the amount of people that like replied to me and were like, "Oh, I drove across states to go to this event to attend,
Really?
and I had an absolute blast. Like I had the most fun time. Like you said, it's San Antonio. It's like 3 hours away from most of the bigger cities in Texas. But people actively made their way over there and had one hell of a good time, and they want more of it. And this is only Texas, mind you. We had the Dallas event last year, but what about all the other states? I mean, I would challenge some of these other franchises to actually put on events themselves. Like if you're the LA Gladiators, you have the YouTube Theater, right? Like next to SoFi Stadium. New York Excelsior, Florida Mayhem. There's some other team that is doing some event, I think. APAC put on some homestands last year. But like this event should really just remind everyone of how great of a time live Overwatch can be. And this is what we need. This is supposed to be our lifeblood of what the Overwatch League is all about. And you don't need to put on like a massive homestand. You don't need to fly in like 10 fucking teams, cross Atlantic, Paris Eternal. I don't care. Just bring in like 2 teams. And that's about it. If you're the Florida Mayhem, fly in the Boston Uprising. Why not? Like they're on the same time zone as you. Just like come down. Come on down.
I mean, if anything, the Atlanta Reign would be even better because they're mere hours away.
Atlanta Reign? Yeah. And I
but
mean,
you don't want to pick a team that'll beat you. You don't want to pick a team.
I mean, maybe.
But
if you're inviting the guests, you invite the teams that you think you'll beat. That's the way it works. That's what we should have known as soon as Houston invited Dallas. We should have known this shit was happening.
Atlanta could have invited for a Mayhem, and there you go. Just go over to Georgia. Like this event, really. I just hope that some of these franchises actually now see the potential of what they can actually achieve. And the Texas audience, they've been kind of lucky in a sense that Houston OutLULs and the Dallas Fuel have taken good care of those fan bases. But I mean, I know so many Toronto Defiant fans. The amount of Toronto Defiant fans is like unbelievable. I'm shocked every time I go on Reddit and I'm like, this franchise sucks ass and you guys are still here somehow. Like, go put on a single event, like two events. I think there was some rumor or something that they're doing one. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, they're running them for CD.
Are they doing the third tournament? They're doing the third tournament, aren't they?
I think they already announced that. Yeah. I mean, the Toronto Defiant guys are actually pretty heavily invested in, like, say what you want about, like, Overactive Media Group, but they're pretty heavily invested in the idea of it. So they want to run a lot of events. And, like, pretty sure Defiant also, from what I've heard, makes some of the most, if not the most money out of, like, all the franchises because their sponsorship game is crazy. Like, they get, like, ridiculous sponsors. Like, so, like, they actually
They've got
are
the whole of Canada to look at.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just tapping into the entire Canadian market because you know the Vancouver Titans are not. Vancouver Titans have got Pizza Hut and breadsticks on lockdown.
They don't even have that anymore.
Don't they? I thought they did.
I don't think they do.
They showed on the broadcast.
Oh, did they? So it's just breadsticks that are gone? Breadsticks themselves are gone, though?
Yeah, I think the actual breadsticks thing is... I mean, maybe they'll introduce that later on in the season.
They should do something crazy. They should do a homestand and call it, like, they should actually call it the Breadstick Bowl. And it should be, like, just ridiculous activations of Pizza Hut. Like, there should be breadsticks falling from the sky and just like landing on the crowd and shit.
We appreciate Toronto Defiant.
Yeah,
they're a good franchise. But there are so many other NA franchises that really could learn from this and put on a good show because it's so obvious to me that this is the road forward. And just one live match per week. That's all I ask. Not a homestand, just one live match per week with an audience.
Okay.
And we'll be better off.
Here's my counterpoint to Johnny. I don't give a fuck about the teams in that capacity of like, you should run a team. I want the league to take note of this kind of stuff of like, you don't need to put on this enormous event. And like, obviously in an ideal world, we'd be able to have some more like things like, but like in situations where we can have cool events, we should be running more live events. It feels like ever since 2020 and we went into COVID, like even this year, it doesn't feel like like, obviously, we're doing some of the playoffs and they're trying to do it, and it's hard with APAC, but I think they could easily organize a small set of homestands here and there. And they obviously are doing it with, some of these teams in the future and that are going to be independent of the teams. And I just hope that they see those and remember that, like, fans love this shit and people want to spend their time to go to Overwatch League events. Nothing has changed since 2018, 2019. We're not in Blizzard Arena anymore, but people still love Overwatch and they would go to live events. And I think people get reinvigorated every time they see it on the broadcast. Like, hell, for me, I was in the Watchpoint wagon and like I forgot how fulfilling it is to do a broadcast where you are near other people and it feels like you're collaborating to create a good product. Because like for the last 2 years I've done it in my living room and it's so easy to lose sight of the fact that you're creating something fun and something that you love because you're just standing pantsless in your living room, right? So it's like,
whoa, wait a second.
I don't know what you mean. What's the problem? But yeah, like it was awesome for me to be able to see those live events. I want to go to live events. I've been doing broadcasts for now like 2 and a bit years, and I've still yet to see a live audience as I do it. So I'm hoping we can start stepping more towards that now that COVID's gone.
Yeah, it doesn't matter really who holds the burden, because some teams are going to make a loss doing this. It's not, okay, first of all, it's not just the 2,000 people in the venue that benefit. It's a more fun experience watching from home when you hear the crowd and you see all of the players' faces and stuff, and it's more, you get more engaged with the people, and you get sucked into the feel of it more. And then also, some of these events are going to lose money just because events are expensive to put on, but it's important to invest in the league's success. And if you just did an entire year of remote, it'd be cheaper, but it'd be shit. And there would be people losing interest rather than gaining interest. So I don't mind whether it's the teams or the league. I think that's an internal thing to kind of them talk about who wants to, add the financial burden or the potential success of running a really effective event. But you need them. I think it is lifeblood. I think that's a good term, Jonathan. So the teams that we actually saw there, Houston OutLULs, Dallas Fuel. I want to talk about the Houston OutLULs to start, though, because they began with a ridiculous match against the Dallas Fuel. They have the same beginning to the season as they did last year as well. Boom the Dallas Fuel, and then, both teams end up taking slightly opposite routes as you head deeper into the season. They had Dante on main tank playing Doomfist the whole time, and they looked unbelievably aggressive and so high tempo. They just rolled the Fuel in this opening game, but then that kind of ended up getting countered fairly heavily as they went on to their next match against the Defiant. What do you make of this opener? Is this just them heating up on stage, or they found something incredible in the meta? What happened here?
As someone that was in the venue and had heard, was talked to Tasmo, the GM for Fuel after, he was just talking about, he specifically said, and I think there was the Sean Collins copium article that always comes out after every Dallas Fuel loss as well, and it pretty much said yeah, our nerves got the best of us, because this was technically they had a live event, a game in Dallas last year, but it wasn't really a live event. It was just Fuel on stage playing in front of the fans, and there was not another team there. It was just them. So they said that it was the nerves issue for Fuel, which potentially, I mean, when you watch this, between this and their next match, you see that there is a pretty significant difference in how the tempo that they played and overall how well they were executing. And I think Fuel kind of powered the fuck up, because Jake was feeling super confident. Jake came into the green room and he was he had a shit-eating grin. He was he's the power rankings, huh? Oh, we found the comp, and he was just talking about that, and he was feeling pretty confident, and they felt they'd actually pretty much come up with this Dante Doomfist / Pelican going to the Echo instead of playing more Genji. They said very recently in the past week or so, they had been doing other comps. So I think for Fuel, they were feeling very confident in the read, or not for Fuel, but for OutLULs, they were feeling very confident in the read, and it showed, while Fuel just kind of collapsed under their first live event type of pressure.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think the Echo Doom caught Dallas Fuel off guard, on top of the fact that they're on stage, they have nerves, and it just did not seem like they adapted at all. They just allowed Pelican and Dante to run around. And also, it's not even just team synergy stuff like that. Individually, these guys had some pretty bad games. Sparkle on the Genji was I think he got slept 50% of his blades and stuff like that. He just couldn't get anything done. Edison didn't have a great, starting match for the for his debut on the Dallas Fuel, and then Fearless just felt like he was getting bullied by the Winston the entire time. So it's just I just don't think they were ready for the tempo that OutLULs are going to play, and I think they just got caught off guard. We obviously know the matches that happened after this, so it's I don't think you need to read into it too much. It sucks as a Dallas Fuel, but I think the true outcome came a little bit later in the weekend.
Yeah, and I think it's still very early on, literally week 1, but also in terms of the teams practicing ahead of the Overwatch League and figuring out some of these compositions. So what Jake said, that they just figured out the Doomfist and the Echo. Ooh. That sleep was amazing, by the way, by Fielder. So hype as well in an audience. But even later in the week, we saw even more compositions that I would theorize people just came up with this past week. And I can even confirm that 2 weeks ago, what was meta was Zarya, Soldier, Genji, and people rotated ultimates, and that's what they like to do in scrims. They were we're going to have a Graviton Surge, or we're going to Nanovisor, or we're going to Dragon Blade, and that's how we play the game. I think this Winston adaptation, and now I'm speculating, but I think the Winston adaptation is pretty recent as well, like maybe the past couple of weeks, and now we're moving more into Doomfist territory. So especially after a bit of a buff he got. So this is naturally going to happen. You're going to see good teams get upset based on compositional choices. It's going to keep happening. Later in the week, we saw some more Soldier Tracer, which is, I think, what we're going to eventually move towards, maybe more in the next week or so. Maybe some more Doomfist Soldier Tracer compositions to help negate some of the echo play the teams are bringing out. So it was an amazing upset. And Dallas Fuel, they're showing... It seems like they're a bit slow to adapt in that regard, and obviously the Houston OutLULs crowd didn't help.
The overwhelming narrative after this match was, holy shit, Dante on tank. And I mean, there were some other things too, obviously, but that was the big unexpected thing. And then he played it so aggressively and got crazy. I think this was only the second Doom that we'd even seen. I think Hawk played it, and then it was like Dante and a bit of like Fearless playing it here. And then
did Marvel not play it before?
He
this
played
it
at very small
amount.
amount.
Yeah. And then after their game against the Toronto Defiant, the overwhelming community narrative was this team can't win if it's only Dante on tank. You know, it's just too predictable running the Doom all the time. It was such that we've seen two matches of this, and it was such like a holy shit, this is crazy, nobody can never win again. It was like such a hard fucking 180 turn. Do you think, where do you actually land on this, on the Dante tank? They said that they'd only recently done it after playing against a team that had tried a DPS player on tank. Custa, where do you fall in terms of the overarching viability of running Dante on your tank?
People kept asking me, they're like, do you think we're going to see Doomfist players play tank? And I'm like, no, he plays completely differently. There's no value in really doing it. I think the hand cannon is probably the big thing that these DPS players are pulling over. Like, hitting those shots is so crucial for doing damage on the thing. And we saw Dante pop up. My problem with putting anyone on an off roll in which they're really good at one hero is that you lose all flexibility. And the cat's out of the bag after the Dallas match that Dante's going to play Doomfist. And I think Toronto Defiant actually did a really good job. I can't tell you exactly why. I have not watched enough of this interaction, but the finale Tracer made it very hard for Dante to play the game. It felt like every time, like, because Dante can't really lock down a Tracer, and it just felt Finale was just running around and just doing so much. And Finale's not even the best Tracer we have in the league. So it'll be interesting to see what Houston OutLULs do moving forward, because my problem, as I said, is that Dante can't play any other tank, and there will be counters found to how you're playing Doomfist. Doomfist, there will eventually be some way in which if they play Doomfist, we play this, and it'll get shut down. So I think it's a cool thing to have in your back pocket for the Houston OutLULs, but you cannot rely to just play always Dante on the Doomfist and just expect to get away with it like they did maybe against Dallas Fuel, but not so much against Toronto Defiant.
I also think that, in particular, the Tracer was... I think the Tracer was not just a good adjustment versus the Doom, but also because Pelican was on Echo full time. And that was like a big thing, is that like the Echo definitely can't duel the Tracer as favorably. And they're without like, and you can't backline race quite as well if you have a Tracer just like being able to put pressure out two different players now. So I do think that that's like a big, just an overall good adjustment that occurred. And Fuel, or I should say OutLULs, are definitely they were probably just hoping they could get away with it. But the thing is, technically, if we want to put on some hopium glasses, if they want to keep running this, Dante used to play off tank.
Yes.
Way back
in 2017.
I see where this is going. Okay, let's just
way back then.
They went to Korea. That was that team, wasn't it?
Theoretically, there was that team. It was Arc 6. Yeah, it technically could be like they could have him do more, but I feel like that would be kind of foolish. But it is an issue with this, right? Is that if they want to run Dante Doom, they're hard committed to it for that map, and then without having Piggy in to get the extra flexibility. So it is a problem, and I feel like that's just like an issue of like, okay, the meta's not solved. We found something we liked, and then it got immediately countered. I think this is just new game and new league, and it's just people kind of figuring out what exactly is the best move. Because it was a good call to do it initially. It's just teams are going to counter strat you.
I mean, honestly, for where we thought the Houston OutLULs were going to be, being able to go 1-on-1 in this week was a good result for them. It's just we expected it to be the other way around, really. Right? Yeah. It's not like they had a bad week. They're still, 500 team that figured out a really cool strat to be able to take a win over a big opponent, but it got figured out the second time around. Yeah?
Go on.
No. Go.
I wanted to offer a sag on the Dante Doomfist as well. I think I think they should keep playing the Doomfist. I think this is what you do the rest of the kickoff clash, unless the meta like massively changes. Because I think you can. Well, I'm getting to that point. I'm hyping up. I'm building up this hot take of mine. Because I think when you look at all of these other teams that could potentially play a damage dealer on Doomfist as well, the difference is those teams have a main tank. Okay, yeah. They have someone who's actually played some of those Winston, Reinhardt heroes in the past, and they can flex over to those. The Houston OutLULs, they have Piggy. Okay, and if you want to tell me that having Piggy on for his Winston is just massively going to change the flexibility of this Houston OutLULs team, I'm not buying that. I'm like, okay, maybe he's played Diva enough to the point where he understands leaping as Winston like slightly better than Dante, but I don't think it's going to be a massive upgrade in terms of your Winston viability. So I think the Houston OutLULs, they're kind of in a sticky situation where you have to pick whether like, oh, well, is Piggy Saria better? Like, is that maybe what we want to lean towards? He played some Diva here that was really good, by the way, on Dorado. This comp was fantastic. I really like this flexibility coming out from Houston OutLULs. And this is maybe something you could look towards. But if you're going to predominantly play Doomfist compositions, I don't see how having Piggy in the game is going to make a massive difference for your team. And I think you should lean on the fact that Dante is a really good, aggressive Doomfist player, and you have two or three even, or no, you have two fantastic damage players to play alongside him, and try to build around that. I think that their playstyle against Toronto Defiant was wrong. I think that Dante was by himself diving in a lot of the time. Twilight completely countered him with sleep darts, biotic grenades. Muse did a good job utilizing his Winston shield to block some of the incoming support. And it was just like a bad playstyle. Like Dante was quite honestly feeding quite a bit. It played very differently from someone like Hawk on the Atlanta Reign, who was way more held back and didn't go in as much and utilized zoning to set up Kai, for example, on the Soldier, or Ultraviolet on the Ana. So I think Houston OutLULs, they should continue experimenting with the Doomfist comps because I think it's their best bet if they want to win. And I think Dante should just tone back his aggressiveness a little bit, and they'll find a way to work around it.
I want to hit on that because I completely disagree with what Johnny says, because I think that is a good idea in the short term if they just need to win some matches. But this is not a problem that's going to just hopefully go away eventually. Piggy's going to need to be able to play Reinhardt, needs to be able to play Winston. It doesn't look like they're nerfing Winston. He just got an ammo reduction in the most recent patch. They're going to need to be able to play Winston eventually. And I think just short term, it feels like a band-aid solution putting Dante on the Doomfist that's just going to win them temporary matches. If I think they're going up against worse teams in the future and they can find a place in which maybe they can get away with playing some other stuff, I would like to see that, because Houston OutLULs aren't just trying to win matches, they're trying to win some championships and they're trying to win some titles, right? So I want to see them show me that I want them to ease my concerns that they don't have the flexibility, because Piggy as the only tank right now feels like a big problem, especially if they're not willing to put him on the Doomfist or the Winston.
I'm not even going to dig into the Houston OutLULs are trying to win championships, because I think that seems like
they have a good.
Listen, I don't want to dig into that. Maybe they do. Maybe it's out of their reach. So the Tracer in general, though, what I've noticed from this meta overall, which is a bit of a tangent discussion, there are very few people in these comps that can actually apply objective pressure. I feel like it's something that the pro teams maybe are thinking of, like, pretty far down their priority list, but when I'm watching the games, it makes a big difference. You don't have that second tank that would often be your, objective pressure person just getting free push or contesting somebody else. You're not really running Tracer. Your Soldier's running like crazy off angles. Then you have a Genji or an Echo or something that also doesn't do that. It really feels like that's a missing piece of the puzzle right now that can give teams such a big advantage, even though Tracer itself has been nerfed. So I'm really interested to see just the meta direction. I agree it feels unsolved, but it's a cool place for the game to be in. Also, Iris, not a BAP1 trick. Connor was right. Where's the fucking tweet? Where's the tweet of him talking to the woman in an elevator?
I already made the tweet, dude. I made the tweet. I've told you. I believe it. No, actually, it's not Iris. It's Iris.
Sorry,
I can't believe he changed his fucking name again.
Yeah, it was the most bizarre thing when the Outlaws GM comes up and it's like, by the way, it's Iris now. And I'm like, what? Like, okay, like, sure. Like, why not? But I mean, I do think he was a very pleasant, like, it was very nice to see that. I actually, more so, I already believed in Iris, so, like, I don't really give a shit about him popping off. That should have been a given. You know, everyone else is just blind, not a free thinker like myself. The real thing is that Lastro actually looked really good on main support.
The
he
Mercy's
looked
good.
Yeah, like, I actually think, because there is a narrative, I think people are saying, like, well, every flex support can play main support if they have good mechanics. And I still don't necessarily think that's, like, totally true. But Lastro definitely looked really good. So I think that hole in the Houston lineup was plugged up pretty significantly. Because if you take a look at like New York in comparison, I don't think New York was looking quite as hot with like the double flex support options. But Lastro looked great. So
maybe that should be the Houston Outlaws new hashtag plugged up. We plugged up the main support.
Plugged up. Holy fuck.
Hashtag plugged up. That would be a really good one.
That would be a good one. That's the kind of thing that Avast would recommend in the middle of a board meeting.
Hey, it's viral marketing, okay? It's all about impressions.
Yep.
It's all about impressions. Doesn't matter if you eventually have to walk it back. And the important is you got the clicks.
Well, talking about getting the clicks, Jonathan's given us this title for the next topic. Could Dallas Fuel miss the Stage 1 playoffs? They're 1-1 right now.
Hey, Custa, you want to start?
Yeah, because this was my way too early prediction that I did on like Friday or something like after Dallas lost the first match, because they actually have a pretty hard schedule. If they had lost to Washington in their let's say they didn't have that massive bounce back and they lost to Washington, they have 2 more hard matches. They have the Gladiators and then
Toronto, Paris,
Gladiators and then Toronto.
Gladiators, Toronto, Paris, Boston is what they've got.
Yeah, so, and like Gladiators and Toronto both gave some good looks. So there was a world in which they could do this. With that said, when I said they might not make the playoffs of the kickoff clash, I thought only 6 teams qualified, but 8 teams of the 13 qualify. So it started going down really fast, but I just fucking ran with it because it seemed funny. But yeah, it seems unlikely with their win over that. But yeah, it was a scary time to be a Dallas fan after their first match.
For one day.
For one day.
A single day.
I was on that team in 2018. The first day is where it starts. That's the beginning of the spiral. I just started getting PTSD.
Custa, you were not on this team. You were not on the team with Fearless, Sparkle, Fielder. Like, you were not on this team.
and Coco are pretty much the same thing, right, guys?
True.
What did you guys think about the bounce back then against the Justice? Is this the Dallas Fuel that you were expecting to see?
Yes. Much more so. I think also it's clear that they still have some figuring out to do themselves about the meta, and also like Edison's like play, like pretty honestly just the meta. Like I think the big thing for them is that we saw a lot of like particular like Reaper from them, I think, and a lot more Zarya came out from them than a lot of other teams. So that might have been because they played more Eichenwald. And we had this discussion a lot with David the Iron Shoulder Pay, and some other people about how like their Zarya still like she felt pretty good, I think, in early like alpha / beta when teams were starting to like scrim, but she definitely doesn't feel as strong as like the Winston or the Doom or even the Rhine currently. So there is, because like essentially Rhine does her job in terms of taking space better and does more damage. But he just doesn't give quite the same utility with the bubbles. But in reality, you can just like do effective dives and eat a lot of the cooldowns anyways. So that's like I feel like Fuel are still kind of figuring out their place a bit, but overall they looked a lot better. I think Edison also, in particular, Edison looked a lot better in this match than he did the match before, which was important.
It's a weird kind of place to be at with Dallas Fuel when all of the like scrimbuck narrative, when we were doing the power rankings, and I'm like, I feel like, you know, 4th, 3rd, something like that. You're like, Dallas Fuel are going to define the meta. They live, they breathe, other people copy, they create, you know, and now your concern is that they're, you know, still figuring stuff out. Is that an element that it feels like it should be Dallas Fuel's meta, hands down, unbelievably powerful in this kind of situation. They've got Genji that they can rely on. The hit scan picks are not too crazy. I mean, it's Soldier for the most part, or Reaper like they're playing. They got Winston. Apparently they're cracked on the Doom is what everything was leading up to. Ana Lucio in the back, like it should be perfect.
Yeah, I mean that's the most shocking thing, that we heard so much hype about their Doomfist comps and we didn't really see them at all in week 1. Which was a bit
Fearless played like one
a little bit of it. They played, they played a little bit of it, but like they didn't commit to it. And instead they preferred to play some other tank heroes. I'm honestly a bit down at the Dallas Fuel, even if they won against the Washington Justice. They played that Zarya, Reaper, Genji composition, which I mean, this was a dominant map on Route 66. But on Eichenwalde, they did play that Reaper, Zarya, Genji composition, which is very good in like close cornered maps. Like Last Point on Eichenwalde, for example, where the Reaper can get in range. You can bubble both the Dragon Blade and you can bubble the Reaper going in with Nano, etc. So they're very protected in that sense. But I think it does such a poor job of like setting the tempo of the match. You have a hard time building momentum with this composition, and you rely a lot on these ultimates. You're relying a lot on the Graviton Surge to get value. And personal preference of mine, that's just not like a win condition that I'm comfortable with as a player, saying like, well, we got a Graviton Surge in 2 minutes, so we should probably be able to cap the point of that. Obviously, it's not that simple, but when I look at the Dallas Fuel, I'm like, you guys should be the one who like go aggressive. You guys should be the one that put the pace on the Washington Justice and force them to unforced errors, or well, that never mind, and force them to like mess up, and win that way. I don't like the Dallas Fuel to say, hey, we're going to bubble Sparkle in with a Nano Blade, and you know, Hanbin will get a Graviton Surge. Hanbin is a great Zarya player, by the way, and Hanbin's going to get a Graviton Surge, and maybe we'll win based on that. It's not a win condition that I expected the Dallas Fuel to play around, but you know, it's map dependent on some compositions. I was just a bit caught off guard, I suppose, by Dallas Fuel reluctance to push the pace a bit harder, because that's what they were known for, especially last year as well.
I'm amazed that people are playing Widow Genji comps, by the way. Widow Genji.
I'm surprised Widow's being played at all.
Yeah, but it feels like there should be so many other comps that are more that get you more value. Like when people were playing God, I still don't know the names of the maps. Circuit Royale, which for some reason is named Circuit Royal, but the announcer says Circuit Royale.
He asked Aaron, and he's like, Royale, and we're like, why doesn't it have an E then? And he's like...
So, anyway, on that map, like you're seeing Widow Genji being played with some teams. Feels like feels like Hanzo Genji might be more viable. They're on route. Like it feels like there should be more options with the flankers instead of the Widow. But I don't know. It definitely feels like there's something going on psychologically with the Widows where they feel like they need to match each other in order to scare them away from just having free shots all the time.
Yeah, it was pretty map dependent though, wasn't it? I feel like we only saw it on like a couple areas, right? With Circuit Royale and also like, I mean, Route 66 in that match, like they're pretty much maps that had like huge sight lines still, which I mean, I think makes sense. So
yeah, I thought it was good. Like it was cool to see some Widow here and there, and like different maps were conducive to different things. A part of me with this like Dallas Fuel like hard, it felt like struggling or like changing their way up. I wonder if, you know, like 2 weeks ago, we were saying that like Doomfist felt very prevalent in the meta and Dallas Fuel were leading with that Doomfist Genji. I wonder if these 2 weeks, when we've seen this shift to Winston, we've seen some more teams playing the Echo, if that's something that Dallas Fuel didn't think was going to be a problem. And then as you scrim more and more, you start to realize that, oh shit, this actually might be something that is good against our composition. Feels like we're playing like a rock, paper, scissors almost right now with like Winston, Doomfist, Zarya, and like Genji, Tracer, Echo. Like there's some form of like counterplay that's happening there that I don't think is being solved by the teams. I think the teams are just sort of playing what they think is better or what they think they're good at, but there's no real like understanding of what counters what right now.
Yeah, it's entertaining though. I mean, it's I think week one there's only been something like 4 heroes that haven't been played. Maybe it's 5. What? Sorry.
And they're all supports. Like it felt like support was the only category we didn't really get much flexibility in.
Yeah, there's been no Bastion as well. I remember that being one of them. But yeah, it's been pretty versatile. I remember week 1 of last year, I think it was, had every hero being played somehow. I don't know how that.
I'm actually. Did we? I can't remember. Did we? Which supports did we not see? Didn't we see them? But did we not?
Yeah,
didn't
I
we see
feel
them
like
all?
we did see them all, though, didn't we?
Like, did we
Yeah,
not see?
in a
The only one I
small
could think of maybe
percentage.
was like Moira, right? But didn't we still
No, we
get
definitely
Moira?
saw Moira.
Yeah, I was about to
some
say,
teams
yeah,
are
we
playing
definitely
Moira
saw
Lucio.
Moira.
Yeah,
I remember we saw Baps in.
Scott just means the amount of it. I mean,
Oh,
the
yeah.
vast majority was on Lucio.
Okay, got it.
Lucio Ana was played like 80 or 90% of the time, right? Well, it felt like tanks. I think there was probably like a 30% split on a bunch of tanks. The only tank we didn't see was Orisa, which is kind of disappointing because Orisa is super fun and cool to watch, but she just isn't very good, I feel like, in the pro meta.
Imagine saying that last year. Imagine saying, "Damn, I'm so darn upset we haven't had an Orisa meta yet. She's so fun and versatile." No, I at some point during the season, if we ever see that, it's gonna be fun. I mean, people out there just fucking hawking javelins at each other, trying to pluck people out of the sky. All right, let's talk about another team that I had very high hopes for and ended up being. I mean, they have popped off. They've got their wins, but I haven't been fully convinced about them. LA Gladiators. They've been doing very well. If you just looked at the league standings right now, they'd be, all the way up at the top. But I felt like there was some shakiness here in terms of how they were actually coordinating together compared to, your Shocks or Atlantas or, like Houston in the first game or Dallas in the second game, something like that. What's your read on the Gladiators right now?
I think it's like, they got 2 wins, but they were both 3-1s. And one was against New York Excelsior. That does not look to be a very strong team right now. It feels like they're heavily struggling with how they want to play the game. And then Boston Uprising, a team that almost lost to Vancouver Titans, which I think almost everyone would say is the worst team in the league. So it's like, it's kind of hard to have this justification that it's like, this was a great weekend for the Gladiators. And you could see some cracks and you could see some like fumblings of the ball from the Gladiators as well. So I don't think, like, in comparison to other teams, I think the San Francisco Shock bodied their easier opponents, while I feel like Gladiators stumbled a little bit when they should have been almost 3 wins.
The Dallas Fuel had a 1-1 week, which is not what was expected. The Gladiators had a 2-0 week, which was expected. I feel less confident about the Gladiators going forwards compared to my expectations for them than I do about the Fuel. Do you feel in a similar way?
I agree.
No, I'm totally agree with that. I think that was the big thing for me. More so is like, sure, Patapan had some like, a lot of people focused on Patapan, I think, having some like bad blades and having some mad moments, which is sure, but definitely the overarching narrative to me was that they didn't look as coordinated as some of the other top teams. That was the big thing for sure. They did not look nearly as clean. I think Reiner looked great coming into I was very big on him. So he looked great, like fantastic. Their backline looked good, obviously. It's just they still didn't look like individually all pretty good, except for Patapan having some misses here and there. But it was all mostly a coordination thing. So I feel definitely less confident about Glads going forward. It's why I still feel good about having, Atlanta above them in the preseason power rankings for myself, at least. Sure. Just because, this is like their form doesn't look incredible right now, but it's still really early, right? And it's clear that the skill is there.
The individual form of Shu and Kevster is just bonkers.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And Reiner too. I think Reiner is looking good. Like, I think overall, like, this is an overall just fantastic team individually. It's just they have to figure their shit out a bit. So
the reason I'm not as big on Reiner as I feel like the general community is because I think a lot of the coordination, it doesn't necessarily have to come from him, but he's got to be involved in it to a pretty large degree. It felt like Reiner and Paddy were not on the same wavelength in terms of when they wanted to, do these engages or try and set up or support each other on the, when Paddy's blading or something, which I saw, if you want to compare them to Shock, for example, Kaluj playing with Sam was just nasty with those levels of coordination, where I don't see that from the Gladiators. And I'm not saying that has to come from Reiner. I mean, maybe Paddy's just like on a totally different brain wavelength. But there is more to Winston than just trying to get your own individual value.
I would say as well, with the way that I feel about the main tank, or like the tank player in 5v5, is that it is a lot more of an individual head-to-head of like the Winston versus the Ana than it was in the past, because it felt like there was a lot more coordination. You had another tank like going. It was more about syncing up. While I feel like obviously you need to sync up with your DPS, but as a Winston, I feel like we saw more tanks get slept than we've ever seen before, because there's no extra protection, right? Yeah, there you go. Right on time. And I the thing that I am hesitant on Reiner is I don't think he's played against the best backlines yet. Like, Boston, New York, they are not the best backlines that we have in the league. So I want to see how he's going to do individually when he starts going up against people who are of caliber of Shu, right, who's on his team. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves and the narrative of Reiner evolves.
Patapon, though, my biggest issue with him was that he tended to not respect his opponents enough, not realize when he was going to get punished, stay in for too long. Let's say the Gladiators went for a target and they ended up slipping away a little bit. Paddy would stay in for maybe only 2 seconds longer than the rest of his team, but would end up getting caught out, and he has to dash to escape and just gets caught with a couple of percentage left on his health. That kind of stuff was happening way more often than it was to the other top-level flex DPS players, which you have to compare him to those.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I'd love to bring up the stats, but it doesn't seem like the website has been updated with the stats yet. And, it's been a long weekend, so it's easy to forget about the details. But if
stats are for nerds anyways.
Yeah, but I'm a nerd. I'm a big fucking nerd. And I want my stats. I want them now. But they did play less variations of compositions. They did play the Widowmaker stuff, for example, on Circuit Royale, right? Ans had a great showing. I believe he played Widow on Gibraltar as well in one series. Like, he looked really good. Ans looked really good at times. But we didn't see the Doomfist, if I'm correct, from the LA Gladiators.
I don't remember.
And I don't think we saw a lot of Soldier Tracer from them either. So it's just like warning signs for me. I'm still a bit cautious about the LA Gladiators. You have the team sync issues where Reiner and Parifan are struggling a bit individually to sync up and make the most out of it. And then as well, like we've seen teams like the Houston Outlaws play the Doomfist pretty willingly. We've seen Dallas Fuel be able to play, Winston compositions and Sora compositions. Seen teams like Toronto Defiant, who have amazing flexibility, be able to play like Soldier Genji and seamlessly swapped over to like Soldier Tracer, which provides an entirely different playstyle. The LA Gladiators, I'm a bit uncertain about how they're going to go about that and what their willingness is to play some of those compositions and how they'll match against some of those teams. So obviously, fantastic team. Want to see more of them. One of the most fun teams to watch, but just a bit of uncertainty going into week 2, I guess.
If you wanted to play Soldier Genji and Soldier Tracer with the Gladiators team, you would have to keep Ants Kevster in, and Kevster would have to flex between Genji and Tracer. And Kevster's Soldier has just been monstrous. So, I think that would be a little different for them. I also, this map was real dodgy from Gladiators. They rolled New York all the way to the end and then just stuck on the same comp the whole time, trying to force it through, not making that great like rotates, not making any shifting comp, relying on alt cycles to win. They had 4 minutes to push it like 10 meters and they just couldn't.
Felt like they were relying on Ants. They were just hoping he was going to get a couple of kills, but he just never did because they just never got the space to do that. I agree that I think it's the little things. Like, obviously, the Gladiators got the 2-0, but it was the little things that you notice that you're like, that doesn't really make sense, or like, why is it being done this way? I remember there was a map that the Gladiators played as well, where like randomly we ended up on Kevster on Genji and Paddypan on Soldier. Like, somehow they've flipped the role that they were playing in the map. It screamed to me that they weren't exactly sure how they wanted to play the game or going in with a perfect game plan. It felt like they were just sort of relying on their great individual skills to get them over the line rather than like solid team play and mechanics. And I think that's my concern with the Gladiators right now. They haven't shown me that they're thoroughly coached, thoroughly won as a team.
Let's take a sharp right turn, shall we then, into the Toronto Defiant. This was a team that we've tangentially discussed so far because their performance against the Dallas Fuel earlier. No, sorry, against. My brain is failing.
Outlaws.
Outlaws. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
The other Texan team. So, is the Toronto Defiant a legitimate candidate for top 3 North America?
This question?
This is a Jonathan reinforced Larsson classic. But I think when you look at the power rankings, there is there's a circle of teams beating other teams where you have to make a value statement about one of them and why you feel better about them compared to the others. And with the Toronto Defiant, what did they do this week? They beat the Justice and lost to No,
Lost
sorry,
to
the other way
Justice,
around. They
beat
lost to
Houston.
Justice, beat the Houston OutLULs. For some reason, Toronto Defiant are just a mix-up in my head. How do you feel about their performance overall? I thought that they looked good, but not good enough to put them into top 3 North America, in my opinion.
Hey, the title is contender. Are they a contender? Okay.
So what does contender mean?
You know? Well, you define that. That's what we're figuring out on the show. Stay tuned. Listen for more.
So a team that
think,
could, by the end of the kickoff clash, be on the podium. Is that what you're saying?
What sort of Alex Jones-esque questions is like? I'm just saying they could, like, it just those open-ended like things possible. It's like it's just questions. It's just questions
bro,
here.
I'm trying to find ourselves a sponsorship. I'm trying to get the fucking views, bro. We need to pay our guests. So here I am. I'm trying to make the most of it. Don't blame me. Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right. I think Toronto Defiant has a lot of potential. I think they look pretty great. I think the Washington Justice series, they obviously should have won push. Like, what was that last fight? Like, what the fuck was that last fight on push? They had the man advantage, and then like Washington Justice Mag comes out and stalls on Doomfist to like give his DPS time to get back to the fight. Like, that should have been a 5-map series. Different universe, maybe Toronto Defiant actually win that series as well by going to map 5 and then winning that. You know, we'll never know. Or well, we do know that they lost on map 4. But Toronto Defiant, the way they play against the Houston OutLULs, I love the individual skill from this team. The backline didn't really show up for me against the Washington Justice, Choring and Twilight. We had seen some other teams like Atlanta Reign rely on Ultraviolet to hit these fat nades that just won fights instantly. And I didn't really think we saw that from Twilight in this series. Honestly, I think that Washington Justice backline of Opener and Krillin outplayed the Toronto backline in this series and had more impact. I thought Krillin played great for the Justice.
It's a ridiculous
that was
statement.
pretty disappointing.
It's a ridiculous statement.
It is ridiculous, but he's right. He's right.
But I'm right.
No,
I'm right.
Yeah.
That's the most important part.
I don't
I'm
agree with
right.
that. I agree with the ridiculous statement. Sorry, continue.
So in that way, Toronto Defiant, they were pretty disappointing in this series, and I don't think they showed their true selves. But then, as the week progressed and they play against the Houston OutLULs, suddenly we're back, baby. Chorong, holy shit, did he earn his rookie money? Twilight as well. The way he slept Dante, he was patient and had discipline and made all the right decisions. Hey, I'm going to sleep Dante, but I'm not going to bionate him because I'm going to get more value bionating the backline. Those are the kind of like educated decisions we want from like one of the best honors of all time. And that's where he really showcased why he has such a good reputation. Hisu as well. He did what Hisu does. Not an elite player. Avast is going to argue with me on that one.
Yeah,
I think Finale was the true bright spot for this team. His ability to play Genji at a really high level and then seamlessly flex over to the Tracer, which not a lot of players can do, and have equally a great impact against the Houston OutLULs. I'm optimistic about the Toronto Defiant. I underrated them going into the season, I admit. I was a Toronto Defiant denier. Well, here I am. I'm an approver of the Toronto Defiant.
Just immediately making pivots after a single week of gameplay.
After what we've shit on Reddit, and then it's like, actually now
why am I getting so much flame this episode? What am I doing wrong?
Because you shit on co-streams, Johnny, and now I'm gonna make your life hell. Now I'm gonna make your life hell, pal.
The primary living of two co-hosts. Okay, got it.
Jonathan, Custa, talk to me about the backline.
No, I don't want to talk about the backline. I like the backline of the Toronto Defiant. I think Chorong and I agree Twilight didn't have a great first match, so I can understand why Johnny's getting high on the Washington Justice backline. I think Krillin was really impressive, but I think they didn't have a great first match, but they were back, as Johnny said, in the second match against the Houston OutLULs. But I'm not sold on the DPS lineup of the Toronto Defiant, and I think they, as much as we can talk about, Finale looked really good. I don't agree with the Genji. He looked good on the Genji. His trace was really nice, and I think it had some good plays. But we're talking about top 3 NA now. If you can't play Tracer because you can play Genji, then get out of top 3 NA, right? Like everyone can do that at this point. And I think Hisu and Finale are going to be the weakness and the crux of this Toronto Defiant team from what I saw this weekend. I think Muse pleasantly surprised me on the main tank. I think he was incredibly good on the Winston, but the DPS, Hisu got bodied by Happy. Like, it wasn't close. Like, that was like one of the big problems that I think they had against the Washington Justice. And Finale didn't offer enough. And I think the issue they're going to have is neither of them are superstar DPS players. Like, neither of them are going to be able to go against the best consistently and come out on top. I think they are good. They are going to be a solid team. They're always going to be a team that these top teams have to worry about. but can I see them consistently beating the top ends? I don't believe so. But I think it was a good performance, and I think it was good. I think they're around where I put them, or we put them in the power rank, because I wouldn't move them too much after seeing them this weekend.
Where did we even put them? I can't remember.
They were like eighth
or mid-tier.
Yeah, they were like seventh or eighth.
They were kind of like a mid-tier team, like maybe towards the top of the mid-tier potentially, I think.
Were they really? Did we put them that high?
Yeah.
Or like 11th overall, I think.
I think, man, I think was a relatively fair ranking for them looking at them now. I don't know. I'm looking at this team. I'm looking at Chorong Twilight Pound, like in that second match. I think, and like you said, Custa, I think Muse looked way better than I expected he was going to look in that second match. I think that I feel like this is, I don't know if it's a skill problem with Hisui Finale or if it's more of like we're figuring out how we want to position them type of thing, because I feel like I saw moments of mechanical brilliance still for them both. So I'm actually still cautiously optimistic. Once we add in on Hoot.gg the ability to do calls on the stock market, on the Overwatch League stock market, I'm buying calls, okay, on this team. I think this is going to be like, I still, when I look at this, and legitimately a big part of it though really is because like the backline, and that's like a match for Outlaws, holy fuck, Chorong Twilight pounded. They really did pound. So I'm still feeling pretty confident about this team moving forward.
So you're talking about Hisui and Finale quite a bit, but Finale had a good performance in this game. Is that more you thinking that, you know, it worked here because he's fairly uncontested on the Tracer and he's able to, like, they just had a read on what Outlaws were doing and it matched up well?
I think he was coordinating pretty well with the team in general. I think he had like, I think their coordination wasn't quite as elite tier as some of the others we've seen, but definitely between Muse and Finale, we saw some very good, and also Chorong. There were fights where like the backline plus like a DPS player would just win it. They would just like they would get into a scrappy situation, and then Chorong Twilight and like Finale or Hisui would like, they'd have a 3-man fight and just win because their coordination was like good. Their cooldowns were good. I still think they have the talent for this team looking at them after the Outlaws match, because personally, I think Outlaws is a better team than Justice, even though like Justice might currently have a little bit more flexibility under their belt with like how they set up their team because of the whole Dante Piggy situation. But I do think that Defiant have the right calls, and I think Finale was still coordinated with this team, even if he wasn't super contested. But there was times where Outlaws would swap and they'd be looking to hunt down Finale, and he would still be getting value. So, yeah.
Okay.
I still feel good. I still feel good about him.
We shall keep track and update our models as more evidence is given to us. Let's move on to the next team. We had the San Francisco Shock play this week. They went 2-0. They looked great. They played against some much weaker competition than our other big teams. They 3-0'd both of their matches, but it was against London and Paris. And honestly, London playing way better than I think a lot of people would have thought, but also hard one-trick in the Rhine comp kind of stuff. And Shock kind of dealt with both of them and looked impressive throughout. How much of that is them actually being good, and how much of that is their opponents being lower caliber than, for example, the Dallas Fuel played against, or the Atlanta Reign played against?
I think it's the San Francisco Shock mechanically are just better than both of those teams. And I think it's hard to really get a gauge of how good the Shock are because I don't think they were like properly tested. It felt like they were just like, because no one's doubting the individual talent on the Shock roster, but it felt like they were just getting away with doing anything proper. It was just existing in the backline and just egoing anyone who decided to try and test him. So I'm optimistic about the Shock team. They performed about where I expected them to. The real question becomes, I think they have some harder matches this weekend, right?
Yes,
they're playing. They're playing Houston, New York Excelsior, and then after that, they play against the Los Angeles Gladiators. So I'm curious to see how they're going to do against Houston and how they're going to deal with that. Because I also don't think Shock were ever forced to adapt as well. It felt like they just played this Winston Genji soldier for a majority of the time. And we didn't see many other looks, and that's just because it worked.
They played Genji Tracer as well, and they were also... I think they were forced to adapt in terms of like how they took fights against opponents' compositions. They just didn't have to actually adjust their own comps.
Yeah, and I think it was good. Like all their rookies had good performances. Like they have 83% rookies or something like that. Like 5 out of their 6 players are rookies. They all look to perform quite well. So I'm excited to see more Shock, but I don't think we've seen the real San Francisco Shock has not stood up. Like some people would be like, oh, they're going to win the championship now. Look at how well they played. Like they played against two pretty struggling teams. Even though London Spitfire looks like they've improved, not to the level of the San Francisco Shock.
I was very impressed by Sam. I thought that Sam, to me, I mean, compared to expectations, was easily the most impressive player on the team. But even when you remove that argument of comparing them to what people expected in the preseason, he just looked really damn good. I think Finn also played pretty well. Violet's Lucio is so much better than it was last season.
Yeah.
It was also hyper aggressive, and I do think that might end up being like a bit of a feed warning against some of the better teams. But against these teams, he just got away with everything and was hyper aggro. It felt sometimes like Kalush was just diving with Violet, and the two of them would go and kill people.
I mean, that's pretty consistent, though, with like how a lot of teams are playing with Lucio, honestly. Lucio, and I think this is like loops back into a point you'd mentioned way earlier in the episode about like how flex supports and supports in general were feeling, initially, it felt like the impressions were they're weak. It was definitely, they are slightly weaker than they were in Overwatch 1. But also, I think at the time when we were getting these initial impressions, we hadn't adjusted our expectations for how supports are supposed to play in Overwatch 2. It's a very different play style now where like your Lucio player, like Li Zhigong is about, I think he's about to unleash pain and fury upon the Overwatch League because this man is ready. He's already ready to hyper zoom. And then also because of the passive heals for your support, that you can actually get away with peeling for them a little less because like your Ana can have so much utility and hard CC that no one else does currently. And, if you stay out of the fight long enough to have good position, you can just heal yourself, So there is more opportunities, I think, for these like more aggressive plays. So I don't even necessarily hate Violet's play here. It's more so like you said, does he moderate it at all against better teams?
Exactly. Yeah. Does
I think
he
the play
try to
itself
tone it down?
It's good. But Shock, I mean, I think they're just beat up on two mediocre teams, honestly. Two pretty mediocre, if one particularly not good team that has that. So I just think that's the big difference here for me. As I was looking at this team, like they're just fucking McNasty, and the other teams are they're not. They're just not.
They're not McNasty. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to week 2 because we'll learn so much more about all the teams. But not only will we learn more about Shock when they play against the Houston Outlaws, but we'll also learn more about how Kalush Winston would fare against like a good Doomfist like Dante. So I'm looking forward to see how that plays out.
What did you think about Proper's debut?
I think it was good. It kind of it didn't feel like he got challenged, right? Like he played the Genji, it was good. He played the Soldier, it was good. Like, but as I said, I think you can tell he has just big dick energy just from those two matches of like he didn't respect anyone else he was playing against. Like he was just running around in the back line, just trying to take every 1v1 he could because he knows he's that good and he was that good. So, he needs to prove to me that he can do that against the best teams in the world. And when there starts to be some good coordination against him, like what's he doing there, right? Like, what are you doing, huh?
What are you doing?
That's sort of it. Like the lack of respect he had for these teams, and he got away with it. So
more Genji Widow, by the way, with the Widow just playing the most passive angles possible because they just can't get any space. I don't know. This was driving me a little nuts. But I feel like Proper demonstrated the ability to really hyperflex this weekend and had some nasty moments on everything he played. I mean, he played the Tracer as well for them when they went to, what was it? What was that map? Ilios, I guess? I forgot the name of it there.
Red Ilios.
What, sorry?
Red Ilios.
Red Ilios.
Ilios?
Right,
no,
yeah. Sepia-toned
Ilios. It's the new Ilios. It's
Ilios
like Ilios
Sunset.
in Mexico Breaking Bad filter.
Yeah. This team looks intriguing though. Do you think the rookies are going to define this season? I just wanted to ask you that. Basically, you had a segment on the pre-show, I think it was, where it was like 34% of the Western teams have rookies. It's like 5 out of 6 of this team. Is this just going to be the rookie year where they go dumb hard, mega crazy? There was also a Reddit thread talking about the American Tornado players, and I don't know where they found all of those takes of people saying that the American Tornado players were dog shit, because that didn't feel like the overarching narrative to me, but apparently it was on the Reddit. But they all turned up. All of the rookies seemed like they played well. At least all of the big name ones seemed like they had a good opening week.
And I think that's the thing to take away. I think a lot of people are like, well, rookies are just the future. It's like, well, remember, this is finally the American Tornado guys all coming of age. Like, we knew these guys were going to be good, kind of like Atlanta Academy back in like 2019. It's like everyone knew that those guys were going to make the league and they were all going to be good, right? I think anyone who doubted the American Tornado players, like, just don't know anything about the American Tornado players. They're all very talented. And then on the other side, it's like O2 Blast players, like T1. Yeah. Well, we haven't seen the T1 players, like O2 Blast players. Like, we knew O2 Blast players were great. They were the best Korean contenders teams for like the longest time. These guys have been popping up. They're always going to be good. Like, the question for me goes to like other players that don't come from as storied teams. Like, you know, False for the Vancouver Titans, I think had a pretty tragic match in his most recent one. He got pinned 20 times by Hardy or something like that. He really struggled. And there are other names that are starting to struggle in the league who didn't come from these stories names. So I think I want to keep a better eye on those guys of like how good was EU contenders. Like, we've seen a couple of the best players come out of EU contenders. There's some other players from lesser teams in North America. How are they going to do? Because like, also remember, they're like UV and Ultraviolet, they joined Atlanta Reign, the team that went to the grand finals. Of course, they're going to have better success. They're on a fully functioning team compared to a player joining the Vancouver Titans, right? So
UV and OG, yeah. UV and Ultraviolet are two
the same
coin.
No, the Dr.
Like
Jekyll and
Janus,
Mr.
the
Hyde.
god. Janus. Yeah.
Yeah, but still though, I'm mildly impressed by some of the other rookies, even if you weren't any of those teams. And it's been like a bit of a weird vibe to week one, where especially a lot of people doubted the San Francisco Shock that these rookies would be as good as we hyped them up to be. Because I think a lot of people, they obviously, I mean, what the shit is this?
This is also like a who's who of hideously bad takes on the subreddit. It really is. Just whenever you see some of these names pop up, you know it's gonna be garbage.
Yeah. You guys know you can set titles, right? Or not titles, but you can set like, notes next to usernames on Reddit. Go back and read some of those screenshots. You know, and have it alongside my avoided bad take. The note that I have on Reddit as well. We all have one bad take.
People fucking roasting our power rankings. Last season they were the most accurate correlated to the actual rankings. So yeah. Everyone's power rankings are bad. That's the reason that I was a bad. We're the best of a bad bunch.
Yes, we can all be bad together. But still, though, even if they weren't like from AT or O to Blast, like someone like Finale, pleasant surprise. The guy carries his weight in the Overwatch League against good teams.
Yeah.
Hell, even the Washington Justice, Opener and Krillin. Like, I gave them some praise earlier for playing a really good game against
technically Krillin's not a rookie though, right? He's been around.
Krillin's not a rookie, but holy shit,
Krillin's played about as much as the rookies.
Yeah.
If you were part of the 2020 London Spitfire, you're a rookie. That was not That was not
that
veteran
gave you
experience.
No experience. Is that what you're saying?
No experience.
See, you say that, but 2020 London was the last time they had 3-0 teams up until recently, because they had both they 3-0'd like Chengdu and Spark in 2020 with that roster. So
incredible. That was a good
anyway,
year
just
to look
impressed
back
in general by rookies. Like
London. I mean, London did get a bit of a rub in here in this shot game, but they actually had some positive stuff to take away from this week as well, which was very cool. We've got to talk about the drama, though, of the week. The fucking funny-ass drama of the week, which was the Florida Mayhem's illegal maneuver, which is just the best fucking way of describing. They tried to come up with a cool strat and didn't realize it was against the rules and had to replay the attack half, which... It was, for anyone who didn't see, it was a Symmetra TP on top of a May wall on Circuit Royale that allowed them to kind of cut the entire corner and avoid these super long sight lines. And the coaches tweeted out afterwards that they didn't realize it was against the rules. They tweeted out like the rule book that says you're not allowed to do known exploits. I guess they just didn't know it was an exploit.
DP was pretty open on our co-streams as well. It was just like, wait, we're not allowed to do this, and he knew straight away. So,
I think it depends.
Avala tweeted and said we didn't even have to pull them up on this because so many other people had already got in touch with the league saying this isn't allowed.
Okay, here's my thing. This is a known thing that's been around for a while. You see all the contenders Andy's out there being like, this has been done in contenders for years. It's like, it's obvious every Overwatch League team knew you couldn't do this. Goomba came out on Twitter and was like, yeah, we didn't think this would be a bug or like this would be a problem. They absolutely knew it would be a problem. But it's obviously not something that would, like, look at this and tell me, yeah, this is totally intentional, right?
This
like,
makes sense.
It's cool.
Fucking awesome, though.
It's fucking.
There shouldn't be a rule that stops awesome shit from happening. By the same rule, right? I swear that Defran Grav, the what a play, what a Grav, where he's fucking sliding and bunny hopping around on the rooftops. That would be done under the same rule, wouldn't it? Because he's sliding along.
Sliding. The Maywall is not supposed to go up there, and then because of the SimTP, you're going into an area that no one is ever supposed to go into, right? And like, if you want to go with the idea of it's cool, we should run with it, that's fine. But that if they allow that map to happen and allow the Florida Mayhem to get away with that, a lot of maps change drastically because people will run that shit on every single map. You can do it on Eichenwald. You can do it on a lot of other maps. And it becomes the standard of all of a sudden we have to watch Sim May just because it completely negates a choke in a way that you shouldn't. And imagine being a new viewer watching a game and then all of a sudden there is a May Sim TP wall over the roof. Like, it sets a bad precedent. And I think people are really upset about this ruling, but it's just about competitive integrity. And the reason lots of other teams reached out and said, hey, you're not allowed to do this, can you fix this? Is because they need to make it so that it's not a common thing, because it would just be bad in the long run.
You don't want to worry that this could happen to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we have to worry about the new viewers. They all left after this anyway, so it's okay. It's all okay anyways in that front. I mean, it is unfortunate that this occurred. It is unfortunate.
How about this rule? You're allowed to do it if you're the first team to do it. You're allowed to do it.
Well, I think that's the general. I think that's the general trend for a lot of these bugs, though, is that someone has done it before, so they're not the first.
True. I mean,
they're not even the first.
I don't think anyone actually has done this in an OWL game, though, that I can remember. There was the wall sim TP for King's Row, but that's not trying to get to an out of bounds area, so I don't think that would count, right? So I don't think people have actually done it.
That's the distinction. It's an out of bounds area. It's a place that you're not supposed to go on the map, and that's what's made. It's not the sim Maywall. That's a cool interaction. I think we've done that on multiple different maps. It's just the way that it's just the way that it went over a part of the map that you should never go to.
Can I use the same ruling to disqualify Kefri from my clout game that I played against Bren? He took an illegal maneuver around the back passage
on this very map. That's probably why they didn't do it. I mean, some team.
ZP told me you can't draft worth shit from that G4 game.
You know why?
Cannot draft.
I ended up with him on my team. Just the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, but I completely see where a lot of people come from, and I mean, Huck wrote the tweet, the hyperbole tweet of the day, as well, where he said, "This is bad for the league. This is bad for the viewers, for the fans. This is bad for the esport," or something like that. It's like, okay, I know where you're coming from, but like Custa just addressed, it would get to the point where teams just sit in mass for 2 hours and figure out where they can teleport themselves up to and then glide around. That's not Overwatch. Like Custa just said, if you're the defense and you have to set up on point A, and you have to be well, where do we set up with what composition to be prepared for them jumping off the roof every single time to play a team? The defense structure is just entirely different. Preparing for that is just unreasonable. But at the same time, I like the nostalgia goggles, and it's do you remember Meta Athena, when they boosted up over roofs, some Dorado and Monty chuckled and stuff like that? It was a jolly good old time. It's yes, I also like that. But the teleport just makes it completely unviable. But if there was ways for us to use the Maywall, only the Maywall to boost up a team somewhere, that's obviously should be legal in my opinion. And maybe you can find some creative way to pull off the Maywall, but the teleport on top of it just makes everything absurd.
Yeah, people were bringing up the Doomfist rollout stuff as well, where because you can't glide along the walls while waiting for another cooldown to come up and stuff. That certain Doom rollouts are banned, and people are it's just unfun. The league doesn't want fun, which I don't know.
But I use another example of like ones that people probably aren't aware of. Fisher used this against us in the Los Angeles Valiant on Hanamura, and this is one of the reasons that this ruling exists. There was a spot on Hanamura where you could jump into this, like, you'd be really high in the air and you could like jump on the like the corners of the roofs and you could hold yourself waiting for another jump.
Yes.
And if you got to that point, you could then use that jump again to get to the far back point of Hanamura first point. So your backline essentially couldn't stand anywhere that the Winston couldn't just get to you because he could hover there, wait for his cooldowns, and then go again. Obviously, that's not allowed. You can, as much as you can say that's fun, it's like it makes the gameplay not fun because all of a sudden there's no counterplay to like what he's doing in a lot of ways. And it's obviously not intended. Like, I know I come off as a wet blanket Andy talking about my competitive integrity, but it's just about if you allow one thing, it all starts going, and people are acting as if Florida Mayhem were forced to like forfeit the match or the map or find. It's like they literally just made them play it again and said, don't do that this time. Like, it wasn't a big thing. The only people who are upset about this ruling, I think right now, certain fans. Like none of the players of the teams I think really care.
The president of gaming was quite upset. He's taken it to the gaming Supreme Court.
Oh damn! Okay.
I mean, these big Overwatch League regulators are killing our meta freedoms. They're killing it. It's happening right in front of us.
I loved all of the tweets that came out after this as well. There was a tweet from somebody that Mitch retweeted, and it was like it was something like, I was watching with my 7-year-old child and he was appalled.
John Spector did that to the Overwatch League. He like replied to the Overwatch League.
It's really good. What do you think about this though? If the ruling was, here it is. She turned to me, my 10-month-old was watching this game. She turned to me and said, Daddy, why does the over-fraud league let teams use such an exploitative strategy? I had tears in my eyes as I had to explain to her the realities of life. Thank God for the refs. Just a hilarious tweet. There's so many like that. But what do you think about the actual ruling, right? I'm thinking about Florida Mayhem, right? They're on the attack. You realize the attack is going badly. There's only a minute on the clock. Quick, pull out the illegal maneuver. We'll be able to redo the whole half. Pull out the illegal maneuver. Is it just because it was at the beginning and it didn't actually affect anything?
Yeah, I think it was at the beginning. I think it would because also it's very clear that if they do the same thing again, they probably won't get the same punishment. Like if they just do the same thing again, thinking they can reset it.
They tell them you have to replay the half, and they just do the same thing again. Just run it again. Run it back.
It would have been super Chad. Yeah, I think it was just like they get away with it because it was the beginning, and they're like, okay, fine, you get your one freebie, and it's the beginning of the map. But probably if you do it again, it'd probably be harsher. Like they'd just forfeit the map or something.
This is as well, just like where my experience in production, I just like sympathize where everyone has to work behind the scenes to actually get this sorted. Because they took a 15-minute break to push that fucking cart the exact same distance that they got it in the first place. It was perfect by the millimeter. Can you imagine being the one who's slowly pushing this one-man cart to just like get it the exact competitive integrity distance, and they nailed it. What a headache. Good job, production.
Incredible.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought they were going to have to play the whole thing because I didn't think they had the technology or the brains to be like, let's just flip the halves and then have Paris exactly go to the same spot. So good job.
Yeah, not bad.
They got there.
Let's for a moment, instead of talking about the drama, Florida Mayhem. They actually played pretty well this week. There was major scrim bucks coming through. A lot of people predicting that Mayhem would actually beat. I say a lot of people. It wasn't a lot of people, but there was a significant portion predicting even that Mayhem would beat Atlanta coming out to begin with. And it wasn't like it was a bad performance in that opening game at all, I feel. There were definitely some like holes, like the way that they played the Rhine defending on Eichenwalds felt a little sloppy, but the overarching, strength of this team seems good for a project that is like a classic Gunba Moneyball, essentially, right? Does it give you more hope for Florida Mayhem? I think we had them at like 12th, 13th or something, didn't we?
Yeah. It's a bit of a weird spot to be in for this team, I feel like, because there are some teams that I'm like, oh, they have like overpowering mechanical skill, and they didn't pick the best compositions. They didn't like rotate perfectly and stuff like that pretty early on, which they can improve upon. The Florida Mayhem, they have some good players on their team, but they had really good fundamentals. They had good rotations. The way they engaged, the way Sir Mohed did like aggression with his priority grenades was good. Animo even had some moments. Checkmate had some moments. Like really good signs, like overall for the Florida Mayhem. I don't know what the roof is for this team. I don't know if they can challenge teams like the Gladiators and stuff like that. Obviously they had a pretty rough series against the Atlanta Reign, but some promising signs. But I don't know what the ceiling is for this team, quite honestly.
Who do they play against next week? Does anyone have the schedule?
Vancouver and Houston OutLULs.
Yeah.
Where would you actually? That might be one of the things that we're predicting.
It
All
is.
right. Well,
I think so. Yeah.
not gonna. We won't go there then. Let's in fact move on to that entire discussion, shall we? The week 2 predictions. We've got a bunch of different matches here. Some of the hand-picked cream of the crop. We won't go through them all, of course. So let's begin with the number 1 straight off the bat. Sorry, I'm going way too fast for Kurt to keep up with. Okay, week 2 match predictions. Our first match that we've got sees 2 teams that are going to clash in a way that is the Shock matching up essentially against their hardest competition so far. It's the Houston OutLULs against the San Francisco Shock. Da, 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 da.
The graphics pack.
Ooh. Okay, so for any audio listeners, Custa goes with the Shock. I'm with Houston OutLULs. Connor goes with the Shock. And Jonathan also with the Houston OutLULs. I really thought I was going to be the only person here spreading the Outlaws. And I was going essentially like channeling the spirit of Bren. There is going to be an upset result this week. And I can feel in my bones that it might be this one because we don't really know how good the Shock are because they played against such weaker competition. Jonathan, what is your justification, if you have one, for picking the Outlaws here? Because I feel like Shock are just the on paper favorites.
I mean, I could have just abandoned you if you prefer it that way. If you want to do the old 1 versus 3 Mario Party game, you can do that, and I can collaborate with Custa and Avast to secure the stars.
No. But you have to justify Houston now. I
mean, obviously, like face value, it doesn't make a ton of sense because San Francisco Shock had like a really clean week, 2-3-0s. They looked good. Sam impressed everyone. In general, like the Shock didn't show any weakness whatsoever. So in that way, it's a bit of an upset pick, right? Because Houston OutLULs, they actually showed some mortality. They lost a match, of course. They showed some good signs, but also some bad signs. So it's so much speculation involved in this. But the primary reason why I predict the Houston OutLULs is because I like what they showed when it came to the Doomfist. And I think the Doomfist is very important in the meta we're currently in and like where we're heading at towards the end of the stage. So in no way do I think that, like the Houston OutLULs, like Lastro is going to outplay Violet. It's like, dude, come on. But I do think that teams that generally play a lot of Doomfist, I think they have a pretty solid read on the meta. San Francisco Shock have a lot of things going for them. They have a great DPS line. Arguably, one could even probably argue that they showed they were better than the Houston OutLULs DPS line in week 1. But overall, I just like the Doomfist pick, and I think I have to go with the Houston OutLULs because that's how I see the meta play out.
Shock. Custa.
I think I don't even think it's as much about how confident I am in the San Francisco Shock. I'm not because, they just beat up on 2 European teams. I think they look good. I have hope
is European being used as a derogatory statement there?
Well done, Scott. Well done. Carrying North America's banner. Keep it going.
But yeah, they beat up on like I would say weaker teams. They look good, but I have no idea how they're going to do against the best teams. My question mark is around the Houston OutLULs. I think after a weekend like this, do they go back to the drawing board? Do they want to commit to playing more Dante Doomfist, or do they want to go to a more well-rounded way of playing the game? I think if they play the Doomfist, then San Francisco Shock is going to come in very ready and aware of how to try and deal with the Dante Doomfist. They have a lot of stuff to go off at. Or the Houston OutLULs are going to try and pivot and try and play more stock standard with Piggy in the lineup, maybe try and play some Winston, maybe play something different. And I think it will be weaker against the San Francisco Shock. So I think the Shock have a good matchup against the Houston OutLULs.
Well then, Let us move on to our next game that we have coming up. This one is, if you looked at the power rankings, a clash of the Titans. Not actually the Vancouver Titans. that would not be a good game. Okay, we got the LA Gladiators taking on the Dallas Fuel coming up next week. This one's going to be a banger. Should tell us a lot about the game, and we've all gone with the Dallas Fuel. Someone sell me on the chance of the Gladiators winning this one. Is it just a clean Dallas are going to dominate? That second game of the week just proved it to us. Or is there a serious chance here for the Gladiators to at least make a very good match of it, if not win outright? Someone?
I mean, I think the Gladiators' copium here is that the skill is there. They do have the baseline structure for this team already. They just need everyone to be, in particular Patty Penn, I think, if they're going to continue to play him full time, to be popping a bit more. And they need to obviously build out that structure a lot more for their engages and for setting up their dives, and also like the overall map control and like taking these fights. Because that was one thing I think that Houston did really well, even though it kind of fell apart in their second match. But like when you look at the teams that are succeeding really well with the very kind of dive centric style versus like the rush, is that they're taking fights across the map consecutively, or not consecutively, but like at the same time, simultaneously. And I think Gladiators kind of failed at doing that in a way that was super effective, to where you were taking these two fights at points that made sense. So it's all just about like coordination for this team. If they get their coordination up and they have a little bit more of those individual skill moments, they're going to be perfectly fine in a chance to potentially win this. It's just, if Fuel keep improving and showing like more of that structure that we expect from them, it's looking like Fuel's definitely just the way better team. So.
The Gladiators have a tough schedule as well for this kickoff clash qualifier. They really do. It reminds me a bit of last year, where they began a bit slowly and then ramped up seriously throughout the rest of the season. They're playing against Dallas and then Shock the week afterwards. So, depending on the game that we were just talking about with Houston OutLULs and San Francisco, if the Shock already have beaten two lower level teams and they cruise through Houston and then they head towards the Gladiators, you're starting to think the Gladiator season might get off to a bit of a shaky beginning. And that whole topic we had about, will Dallas miss the opening qualifier? Will Dallas miss the tournament? That might end up being much more applicable for the Gladiators there.
Yeah. Also, I think if you're the Gladiators, just putting myself in the shoes of a player for the LA Gladiators, and I go back and watch some of Dallas Fuel's VODs versus the Houston OutLULs, and I go watch their match against the Washington Justice, I'm feeling pretty confident about the prep we'll get in to see what the Dallas Fuel play and how they play. Because the Gladiators, I think they have a real opportunity to scout out how they play like the Reaper composition with Zarya, and be like, well, I mean, we practice against these compositions for so long now that we know exactly how we want to play Winston against some Zarya compositions. Do we want to potentially put Kevster on maybe some Tracer and play like some Soldier Tracer ourselves? I think there is so much footage out there now that if I'm a Gladiators player, I feel like we can come up with a pretty good idea of how to beat Dallas Fuel. So that's going to be another thing to draw energy from.
Well, from the top of the pack down to further down, let's take a look at NYXL against Vancouver Titans. Is anyone going to go with the Titans? Anyone?
They looked really, really average in this. I would say, I don't know, like let me throw the net out there. Would you say Vancouver Titans are the worst team that we saw this weekend?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because London, I still don't think London really only looked good on one particular style. And they looked good on it.
But they looked good on that.
But the thing is, when they tried to flex outside of it, they looked pretty poor. While Titans, I still felt like they were playing a more majority meta composition that like was all rightish, It's just clear they couldn't play into how like strong London's rush worked. So it's kind of like a weird call for me, because I'm like, I think London looks so specialized and looked like pretty bad outside of their one comp, while Titans look majority at like the comp that's probably more meta across the whole thing right now.
I mean, if you actually look at the standings, right, there's three teams that are down there without a match win, and it's Vancouver Titans, the NYXL, and the Paris Eternal. And at least Vancouver took 2 maps off Boston, but that was against Boston. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
it's not
Titans
really an
definitely
argument,
look
is it?
like
It's not really an
overall the
argument.
worst. They look like overall the worst we saw, but I don't know if they're like the overall still worst team. But
What about Paris though as well? Because I didn't think they had a pretty
They had a hard schedule, didn't they? Didn't they?
Yeah,
Hard-
I think they had a tougher schedule, and they also on top of that, they actually like if you watch their match, like in particular versus like Mayhem, they like there were some good redeeming moments for this team.
Yeah.
They had some okay moments, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I picked this match as well, for us to predict based on what he said as well. I think Vancouver Titans look extra poor because they had no idea how to counter Brawl as a dive composition team. And it was just like brutal to watch Falls, as Custa mentioned earlier. Watch Falls try to navigate around Brawl and not get picked off early. It was just like a really bad matchup. So maybe going up against the New York Excelsior, Vancouver can actually be allowed to play their own style and not have to worry about Brawl comps. I think it's going to be an entirely different matchup, even if New York is still favored.
Can we take a look at the Vancouver Titans schedule, just their upcoming matches as well?
You want to rule them out after 1 week of play?
No, I'm not ruling them out.
They're missing the stage.
What I'm saying is, take a look at that schedule, and what are the chances that they start the season on the same rough footing that they started it on last year, where they're looking at a big old goose egg in the W column?
Their only real winnable match is probably the NYXL at that point, right? And like I'm not gonna come out here with an NYXL flag. Like I don't think NYXL looked that good at all this so far. But they played against Atlanta Reign and the Los Angeles Gladiators, so it's like those are two much stronger teams. And I think that they can. I think they have a much better floor at least to go from. So I'm not confident in NYXL, but I'm confident over Vancouver Titans because I think Vancouver Titans, as you know. Was Avast who was just saying that like didn't like them on the Brawl. They were still better than Vancouver still lost to London playing the dive on Route 66. They both played dive and London lost. Maybe they were boomed at that point, but like I don't know. Vancouver, they gotta win me over because I've seen some redeeming qualities from the London Spitfire and some of these other lower end teams that we were harping on. I didn't see many bright spots for this Vancouver Titans so far.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the London Spitfire then. They have a game coming up in this upcoming week playing against Boston Uprising. A reminder that this is the team, London, that we had at 20th in our power rankings. And two of us have actually gone with London. Myself and Custa are with the UK Massive with Custa and...
UK Massive.
with Connor and Jonathan heading up the Boston Uprising fan club. Custa, talk to me about your London Spitfire pick here. Those redeeming qualities, huh?
Well, yeah, like I think that I like that they have their identity, you know, that they're playing to their strengths. Hardy recognizes there's Ryan. I liked how he played Ryan. He played it kind of like a dive hero. He was just pinning in, canceling, and then like swinging people down and stuff like that. He seemed to, like, he's not, you know, flawless, and like either is the London Spitfire, but I did not like what I saw from Boston Uprising. You guys know me. We did the Plat Chat Power Rankings. I wasn't sold on the team that they put together. That was so good from Hardy.
It's coming home.
He absolutely holds a grudge.
Just only backbone is even from the UK on the whole roster, and it's coming home.
Yeah,
Fuck it
I
up.
don't know. I'm really like I think Boston didn't look very good. It gave me no confidence that I saw Marvel, Punk, and Itzel play throughout in their tank in their two matches. They don't seem to have a great understanding of when they want to play people. MCD and Crimso went back and forth.
What the fuck was that, dude? Boston Uprising. They averaged like 2 subs per match.
Yeah. Like it was 2018.
What the fuck, man?
Like that's something that people used to do in 2018 before everyone realized that's a really bad strategy, because what means is you just have no consistency in your roster and you eventually just start losing to everyone. And from what they've shown so far, they feel like they have not learned that lesson, and that they're just going to switch everyone 100% of the time and they're just going to fall apart.
Dude, they played 3 tanks in 5 maps.
OverGG is not updated.
Yeah.
OverGG
3 tanks
is
in
a
5 maps.
mess.
What the fuck are you doing? That's crazy.
Yeah, you'd have to look on the OverwatchLeague.com. I mean, OverGG
Which is not a mess, I guess.
Well, no, the Overwatch League
that
website is
website's even
absolute
more
mess.
chaos. It's like navigating a website from 2011.
Yeah, it's really poorly designed. But if you go to the match, that's the only place where you can actually see which rosters were played on which maps. But yeah, I really like the way that you've framed London as they know their identity, because that's the same as just saying they're one-tricking, but in a much better way. The Houston OutLULs really know their identity as a doom team.
What are we doing here? You're with me. We're supposed to band together, and you're fucking flaming me.
No, I like it. I do, and I like it for the same reason. But last year, it really felt like London didn't lean into the things that were getting them wins. They really tried to be more like meta, tried to lean into the like strengths of the patch or whatever. It really feels like at the moment they're like, Hadi, you know how to play Rhine. Rhine is fun right now. You don't get punished as much as you used to. We're going to play Rush. We're going to go and beat people up on it. And listen, the top teams will be able to counter us, but we can get a bunch of wins against these teams that can't. And that's what I'm thinking about in this game. Is Boston Uprising of the level where they're going to be able to actually counter this comp? And I don't think they've given me any reason to believe that they can. Well, what's the reasoning from the right-hand side of the peanut gallery?
Mr. Patriot?
I mean, personally, London is just too one-dimensional. I think even though I was like, okay, they're good at this one comp, I just don't think they're going to be able to make it work everywhere. I think Boston, even though I do think they look a little pee-pee poo-poo, and I don't like their sub strategy, and we still, even despite all that subs, we still haven't seen Itzel either, which is crazy. Even after all the subs.
We saw him, yeah.
Did we?
He played Wilkinson, yeah.
Oh, that's right. He played the one, that was one of the matches
Gibraltar, right?
one of the maps I didn't see. But overall, I look at them and I'm like, okay, it's like the Titans for me, but like a better Titans. We're like, okay, you're better at the meta overall. I legitimately think if they just play Striker, they will beat this team. If they play Striker, they will beat this team. Also, Striker, when he was playing, I think looked good. I think he looked pretty good. I think if they just continue to play Striker, I think their backline's better. I think Striker is really good, and I think their overall understanding of the meta is better, even if they still look like kind of uncoordinated. I think their biggest mistake was subbing out Striker. If they just play Striker, they will beat this team.
Yeah. Boston Uprising, I think they're prepared for this matchup. The white shirts, they're steamed.
Dude, no, not
they're a professional organization. He's about to say it, isn't he?
They're a professional organization. And even though at times, the Boston Uprising, they look like they're a worse Hangzhou Spark, with literally all the player substitutions. It doesn't make any sense. I don't have to see MCD play anymore in the Overwatch League. Okay, I'm good. Just permanently bench him and let him have a seat. But apart from that, there were some legitimately good signs from this Boston Uprising team. I think that Crimso at times, he showcased that he still got it on Ana, and Ana is hugely important in this meta, and it's going to matter a ton when you go up against a brawl team like the London Spitfire. You want to hit those Bionades, and Sky Reaper, he did not for the Vancouver Titans. That was not the impact on a performance you want from your fixed support player. Striker, as Avast already mentioned, Striker had a really good soldier, and he had some real impact moments. The way he used Visor, racked up the frags. It was some nostalgic Striker moments, the way he played on soldier, where, some people would say that, he's a tracer one trick and he can't really play as some of the other hits can. I think that he showcased that he can play soldier at a very high level and go at it against some of the very best. Marvel's Doomfist. Can we talk about Marvel's Doomfist for a second, by the way?
It was really good.
It was really good. And I don't know, maybe they'll play him like half a map. They'll find a way to substitute mid-map instead of just favor him on the attack side. They'll find a way, the Boston Uprising organization. But I think that in general, there were some really good signs for this team. And if they can consolidate some of their substitutions, consolidate the compositions they play as well. I liked, for example, the D.Va Echo composition they played against the Gladiators on Ilios. They actually stuck around with them for a really long time, and Valentine had some good moments as well. Valentine, not gonna get ahead of myself. Not the best performances from Valentine, not exactly how I hyped him up, but he had some good moments, and alongside Striker, could be a pretty lethal damage duo. So stop winking your eyebrow at me, Sideshow. I think the Boston Uprising, they have more wins in store. I'm looking forward to see more from the suited up professional Boston Uprising this year.
It's just crazy. It's a crazy thing. I mean, whatever. I mean, yeah, I agree though. I just think overall they're just an overall. I think the quality of their players are still better, and if they just don't sub out Striker, they will win.
Okay, well, let's move on. Week 2, right. North American power rankings. It's silly. It's here. We're going to try and put these teams into order.
We're going to put...
We're going to put these teams into order, but we're not talking where they're going to finish at the end of the season. We're talking right now. It's going to be very different to our overall power rankings. It's going to be quick. It's going to be snappy. We don't have much data to go from. There's going to be a lot of gut feeling. So all right. What have we got here? We can order them. Oh, yeah, we can order the full amount of them, actually. We've got a ranking all the way down to 13, a very unusual ranking system. But that's just all the teams that are in North America. Who would you put at the number 1 position? Because I think there's actually an argument between, I would say, Atlanta and Shock as to who lives up there.
I think overall, because Reign, they played Mayhem, and who else? I'm thinking of the other match.
Houston?
I'm trying to remember the other match. No, it wasn't Houston. They played New York, and they kind of bodied them. Like, both their matches were like. And then Shock. I mean, Shock also played 2 really easy teams. Personally, I'm still feeling more confident about Reign as just like a gut call, and I'm fine to put Reign in first myself.
Yes, I agree.
I'm done.
Okay. Reign in first. Do we agree the Shock should be in second until proven otherwise? Because you kind of like, they played against easy teams, but the easy clapped them as well. And until they kind of trip up, then you can't really like pull them down.
Fine, I'll allow it. Yeah. Yeah.
Who would you have in second?
I'm still tempted that even though they got fucking clapped, I was still tempted. But honestly, the Shock's form did look good. So second is fine. I think second is good.
Were you going to say Dallas?
I was thinking about it. Just be like, yeah, they may have gotten clapped, but I was nah. Shock is fair. Shock's fair.
Okay. So number 3, though. I mean, Gladiators had a 2-0 week, but we all predicted Dallas Fuel to beat them. We all, I don't know what it is, but I do know what it is. It's that the Gladiators look kind of shaky playing against lower opponents. That's honestly the sum total of it. Is there any argument just based on the match data 2-0 Gladiators demand 3rd spot? Can I sell anybody?
I mean, Gladiators fans could argue that, but I won't. So.
Yeah, I don't even agree with what I'm selling. It's soulless. Okay, Fuel, Gladiators. Well, maybe not even Gladiators. How do you feel about Houston? How do you feel about Toronto?
I might have put Houston OutLULs at number 3 because it's very short dated.
Where is Toronto in this?
But hold on. They absolutely dominated the Dallas Fuel 3-0. That was domination from them.
Yeah.
And then they beefed out harder than a cattle ranch on fucking Defiant. So like what? So what's going on after that?
But Toronto are good, and they went the distance 5 maps. So was it the worst loss ever? Am I just going to be like, oh my god, they lost to Toronto Defiant of 2019? No, this is Toronto Defiant of 2022. It's a new era for Toronto Defiant, and that loss does not sting as bad as it once would. So the Houston OutLULs, not.
So where's Toronto ranked then in your ranking?
Yeah,
like
I got 4 and then Dallas 5.
Oh, you've got Dallas.
No,
I just say no. I'm just gonna. No.
I will say though, there is no good way to do these rankings because there is a big circle there where all the teams have beaten each other. So you have to make an assessment based on. The quality of games that you saw. Jonathan's leaning heavily on the fact that Houston game was very close between the Toronto Defiant and them compared to the blowout over Dallas.
Well, here's my assessment of it is I think because like something doesn't give, right? Like it's not like, a fair line. I think Houston OutLULs overperformed in the match against Dallas Fuel and Dallas Fuel underperformed into where my expectations still are. So I don't want to give Houston too much credit for that win over Dallas Fuel. So that's why I want them to be lower on the power rankings, especially seeing as they just lost to Toronto Defiant as well. So I don't think Houston should go that high is TLDR. And I don't think Toronto should go super high either.
Okay. Well, can I just say quickly, it's not so much that I'm super high on the Houston OutLULs as I'm actually kind of down on the Dallas Fuel. And I think their 3-1 win against Washington don't really like what I saw from Washington. And I don't think that win matters as much for Dallas Fuel.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with an absolute mess from 3rd to 7th, honestly.
I'm okay with where it is.
I'm
honestly.
fine. I'm content to keep Gladiators at 4 for the time being.
You're just fine with the RNG. We happen to open it like this method.
Yeah, I just think it makes sense. What would you want to move? Like, I think the 3 to 7. I'm okay with Washington. Maybe Washington should go higher. Like Washington, I feel like No, but they got bopped by Dallas, kind of.
I think
But
I also
if you're
feel better
rating
about
Dallas that
Defiance.
high, the Washington Justice beat a team that's directly above them and got beaten by a team that's way higher up your list. So it doesn't make sense for them to be all the way down there.
So you want to put Toronto below Washington? Wait, no. What?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that the Washington Justice seem ranked too low based on where you're putting the Fuel at third.
So you want
I
to put
think-
them at 6?
Dude, I
And
don't
Toronto
even
at 7?
freaking know.
Then I think Houston needs to go below Washington. If we're going to put Washington above Toronto, then I think Houston should go below Washington as well. So it should be Washington 5, Houston 6.
I
Toronto
Three
7.
on Dallas, and you want to put them below Washington.
Well, I don't know, Johnny.
No,
This doesn't
no.
make sense.
Yeah, none of it makes sense.
Think about it. Okay, so the conundrum here about the circle of suck is that you're assuming all the form was the same at each game, but it wasn't the same form for each match.
Yeah.
When Justice beat Defiant, that was not the same Defiant that played Houston. It wasn't. Like, you take a look at them, they played so much better, particularly their backline and also their DPS. Like, Defiant looked so much fucking better, and Justice looked about the same, I'd say, between their match from then to Fuel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we were taking, let's model it this way. Let's take the average of the two performances from the week. So we don't have to be like who won here, who lost there. Let's try and take some kind of average. Oh yeah, there's tier breaks now in this as well. Drag a little tier break underneath the shock just to dictate where this mess is occurring.
Oh.
Yeah, get one in there.
Wow.
Get one in there. I mean, that tier break's gonna be fucking bullshit next week, but
Yeah, oh,
shove it in
absolutely.
there anyway. So let's take the average. So who had the best like averages of their performances? Maybe Houston out of these teams.
I mean, they smacked the top team, and yeah, I mean, legitimately, probably was Houston.
Like their average performance, because Fuel did kind of shit the bed the first time around. You know, you've got Justice had just like, you know, not the greatest performances. I'm starting to come around to well, there is the Gladiators here who won both of their matches. So, you know, maybe
didn't look
they should
great
be at number
during it.
3,
Like, you
but they
gotta-
didn't look great.
You got to average it out. Like, I'm more than happy to move the Gladiators out. If we want to go for the average, I'm happy to put Houston at 3. I
Okay.
don't think my heart of heart believes in that, but I'm happy if that's
I also
what
don't
our
think Houston looked
standard is gonna be.
nearly as good in their match versus Defiant, though, is the thing. I think Houston still looked good, but they went from looking like really top tier to being like, you know, about the same tier, right?
Sure.
So like obviously
But if-
averaged out, like that's
But
still
but
really
if the
good.
Houston Outlaws had played the same in their first match as they did in the second and won, I mean, we would have had them up in that top
Number
3,
one,
like
right?
totally
Yeah.
different
I
tier,
potentially would have
right?
had them first. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe. Yeah, we would have had them up there, something like that. So let's put the Outlaws in third. Let's give Jonathan his little. We'll throw a bone to Jonathan.
Okay.
Here.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, we'll throw them there.
If
And
we're gonna do
then-
that, I'm willing to. I want to put Fuel 4th, Defiant 5th.
I'm down with that. I agree.
Oh, and the Gladiators who had a
have
2-0
tumbled
week
down the
slipped down to
rankings.
6th.
They've tumbled.
6th
2-0.
on their average.
They went 2-0.
Sorry, how are you saying that the Dallas Fuel's average of those 2 games was 5th best, by the way? They
What
got
do you mean?
3-0 clapped in the first game.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Their
don't know, I like
average
them.
performance of those 2 matches.
What am I gonna? What do you want me to admit it? Do I just incredible bias against?
yeah,
the
it is
Justice?
incredible
You just wanna
bias.
say that?
But it's
I
like
mean-
what they 3-0'd Washington, and like the third map wasn't close. Like the other 2 were close, but like they 3-0'd Washington. Like, and if we're gonna have so does that mean Washington just have to go 7th? Like,
Yes.
how about we work down? Let's put
Yes.
Washington 7.
I think
Yes.
Washington goes 7th no matter what. I think they're hard locked into the 7th.
I think-
I need.
I
We
think
would
the
go to
Gladiators
6.
have to be 4th. I think they're a team that is going to
4th?
move. They went 2-0.
But they played not good teams. They didn't look that
Yeah.
good. Fuel's
I know they
second
didn't-
match, they looked
All these other
overall
teams
better
played each other.
than
But
Glad.
the Gladiators. So what you're saying is the Gladiators in their win looked worse than the Fuel losing to Houston.
No,
In
Because
their
I don't know
average,
about
yes.
that.
In their average,
in the average, but not against the only. If you take the Houston match solo, no. But when you take the Justice win, the Fuel looked way better than Glad's did in their win versus Justice.
Yeah.
So here's what I need to know. I need to know, what did you like about the Dallas Fuel against Washington Justice? What against the Washington Justice fueled you with Dallas Fuel hope?
I
What can
think
they possibly bring into their next series against
their
top tier
Reaper
teams?
cops were good. Their aggression was way better. I think they're also. I think overall their like also even versus Houston, they still had like decent moments versus their dives. It's just they couldn't keep up with the tempo. And so I felt like they still had good moments that they carried over. Then like their execution was still solid. The Reaper comps and the aggression was good. Their individual player skill is still obviously really high.
Yeah.
Overall, their pieces still look pretty good. Like, it still looks pretty good. So
I agree with
just
Connor.
yeah.
Okay. Listen, if the two of you agree, let's go for it. Dallas, you're there. Oh, we're still putting the Gladiators in 6th.
Okay, can we put them? Anyone buy into a Toronto 6 Gladiators 5? Because I agree, you can't go 2-0 in a weekend compared to all these other teams that at least lost one match.
Yeah. Sure. Fair. Yeah. I mean, I'm willing to make that concession, but I think for maximum interaction, we should just put them 6th. But like either way.
Okay, where the hell does a tier break go? Is there actually a real tier break between?
It has to go below Washington. I think Florida isn't there.
I think it goes below Mayhem.
Did you watch that Watch Point Gibraltar in which they played Roadhog? Like that, that just lingers in my mind.
I think, but the thing is, they lost to the team. They lost to the team that is clearly with a tier break above with Rain, who's our number 1 right now.
I'm willing to dismiss the Gibraltar. I think there was a spontaneous moment of the Gunba Ganja hitting extremely hard. And
the Gunba Ganja was
discredited.
I feel like all the teams between 3 to 8 could win against each other right now.
I don't see Florida in that list. Like, I don't know if I agree with that. Like, they're close, but I think they're okay. Let's put Florida in a tier of their own. Can we put Washington and then have tier break Florida tier break?
What does that even signify? I don't even know what that. I mean, like, I guess
they are that would signify that Mayhem are the perfect gatekeepers.
Yeah,
they never
are.
lose to anyone below.
God.
They never beat anybody above.
Sure, okay, I'll make sure. Why not? Fine.
By the way, if you're watching this and you're Malden, you have every right to be Malden. Should we be doing week 1 power rankings? No. Do we have enough data? No. So listen. I know you're angry, but stay with us. Here's the bottom level of the teams. What do you think? I think NYXL are probably at the top. Well, actually, are they?
I like Paris more than.
No, you like Paris more than New York? I don't like Paris more than New York.
I started saying it and I couldn't do it. I think they're in a tier break of their own, though.
Where London go, really? That's my big question, because they definitely move up from 13th. They're like in the conversation for 10th or something, aren't they?
No. They're in the conversation for 11th.
Yeah.
Max.
I think they take 11th. Okay, here's what I want. Okay, and then you guys can just mold at me and then disagree. I want New York at 9, Paris at 10, tier break, London Spitfire, Boston Uprising, Vancouver Titans.
That's what I would be looking at as well, I think. But I'm still not big on Paris, though, too. I feel like that might be too kind to Paris.
You would take Boston over Paris? You're high? Yeah. I don't agree.
Yeah, I agree. Johnny's off the goop.
I think you've taken the Gumba Ganja. You have the Gumba Ganja.
Well, let's start.
I have the Gumba Ganja?
Yeah.
Titans go at the bottom. Titans are at the bottom.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
There's no discussion about that at the moment.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
I think the London Spitfire, right now, would probably beat Boston and Paris.
No, I don't think they beat Paris.
I think they beat Paris.
No.
You don't think they beat Paris?
I don't think they would.
What about this week from Paris has given you faith that they would be able to do that? I mean, I know that you two thought Boston would beat London as well, but
the Mayhem match was pretty good. They beat the Mayhem straight up in a Midtown Soldier Genji mirror.
Yeah, the Mayhem match, like they actually like their mechanics are still good and they have some good ideas. It's just as clear they fall apart with like the execution at times. But like I definitely feel like they overall when I was watching Eternal, I felt like sure. I think you're just remembering the various like trauma that was the shock match versus them, where they were pounded into the fucking dirt, smashed to atoms. Like I don't think that it was representative.
They also
I don't think London Spitfire is like a great team at all. I
agree as well. I don't think London's that good either.
Yeah, it's the Goomba test. Like you just have to jump over this Goomba and you advance to the next phase. And the Vancouver Titans, they just walk straight into it and they failed.
That's it. Yeah, so they go below them. But I like Boston Upright. Like I think it's just a disagreement between London and Boston, right? And that'll be solved this weekend. So like I'm happy to compromise if you guys want to like flip a coin or something like that. But I think there should be a coin.
I utilize analysis at the highest level to distinguish from these two teams. I don't need a coin to determine the fate of these two teams.
Dude,
don't
you
you
are just
think Paris?
pumping out copy pastas.
Don't you think Paris are likely to get sucked into the world of just playing rush mirrors and just playing
you're right.
straight into London? That's what I'm thinking about. If Paris played against London, I swear to God, they just end up 2 European teams colliding, Rhine v Rhine, and Hattie would be like, my playground. and it would end up being the fucking silly European silly European Overwatch being played.
I don't know. I just feel like there's a moderating influence with J-Mac and also Glister on the team. I feel like there's a moderating influence where they could just be like, before the Europeans, like they start like, whoa, like you can feel it. It starts getting a little too European in there. They're like, whoa, everybody calm down. Like, calm down, everybody, right now.
Okay, all right, fair enough then. So you wanted a tier break between Paris and Boston.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm fine with that.
No.
I'm fine with that.
For why? Why?
Because this team's, I don't think this team's very
Bams.
good. I don't think this team's very good.
I would rather put a tier break between London and Titans.
Oh no, it was 3-2.
It was
wasn't it?
literally
No, it was 3-0.
It was the 3-0, yeah.
It was the 3. Well, no, but the 3-2 was
no,
Boston against Titans. See, that's why for me, I would put London above Boston, London above Boston, and put a tier break underneath London.
It was a different test. It was a different test. You're comparing like doing a math exam to like physics. It was completely different.
Maths and physics are pretty similar. You should have picked like maths and history or maths and geography, maths and art. Maths and physics are pretty similar.
It's the same game. It's different formulas.
I do not want Boston to be below London. I don't. I just don't think a team with the backline of Faith, Crimzo, and Striker on the team.
To London. How can you put London last and then say that Boston?
They almost lost to Vancouver.
I'm not putting
Vancouver. Sorry, they almost lost to Vancouver.
Well, I think Vancouver, once again, I think this is a moment we're taking a snapshot in time. Okay, we're taking a snapshot in time, and at this exact moment, Titans failed the Goomba, like Johnny said. They tripped. They're like ZP. They fell down the stairs. They're sprawled out. They're fucking sprawled out right now. But they are going to figure it out. They are overall the better team, I think.
Okay, but wait, we're getting into the semantics. Wasn't the whole point of this power rankings we are taking a snapshot in time?
Yes.
Isn't that the whole point of this?
But I still think Boston, in this snapshot in time, when they played Striker, are the better team. If they play Striker in that snapshot, if we take an even smaller snapshot of like when they're playing Striker, like then they are the better team in that moment.
Okay, what have we got at the moment? What is this? What is this mess? Well, we were split 2-2 between London and Boston. So.
Yeah, can we flip a coin?
Just flip it.
Yeah, flip the coin. Let's flip the coin.
Custa, you call it. What are you, heads or tails?
Heads, Boston is in 11th. Okay?
Okay.
Tails, Boston is in 12th.
You have to flip again. Heads.
Let's go!
Wait,
No, let's go.
Wait. Shit.
Is it?
No, Tails was Boston's 12th. Tails was Boston's 12th. Heads was Boston's 11th.
Yeah, Boston's Boston 11th. Yeah, you guys won.
Oh, yeah, they won.
We win.
Fuck.
That's right.
Everyone celebrates. Everyone celebrates. No one knows the rules. Just flip them around. Flip them around.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. All right.
Fuck.
So
Now,
this
can
is
we
a
coin flip Paris,
disaster.
Boston 10-11?
No,
If it's
we can't. No, we can't. Absolutely not.
Can we flip for
Absolutely not.
tier break between Paris and Boston?
Yes.
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 Right?
This is
I feel
stupid.
I feel like
This
that's
is a
fair.
stupid game.
Go on then. I still feel like you might be a bit too high on Paris. Didn't they only win a single map all week?
Yeah,
I mean, I
but it
know
was
they
for
played against
Florida.
the Shock. I know they played Shock, but
And Florida. And like that match against Florida, like there's a couple of team fights that go a different direction, and that's a very different
it
fight.
could've
Like
been-
that
it
was a
could've been like a
close
map
match against Florida. And we have Florida in 8. So it's not like like as I said, I'm off the group, but maybe it's just that like I genuinely think that Boston, London, and Paris are in a tier of their own. Like I think Paris would beat all of those teams. I would pred Paris to beat every single one of them.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Custa on this one. I agree.
okay, fair enough. Bloody hell. Let's get into the next segment. Teams to look out for in week 2. Who have you got your eye on for week 2? Who are the fun teams to take a look at? Who's the teams that you really need to like figure something out about? Which are the big matches to watch?
Oh, I kind of want to watch Florida because they do something stupid they played Roadhog on Gibraltar. That was funny, and then they cheated on Circle Royale. So that was like they're gonna be an interesting watch. You know, you might not like them, but they're gonna it's gonna have a banger. So,
Dude, yeah, true.
I mean, the Fuel Glads match, obviously. That's a huge one to watch. I'm actually more interested. I'm really interested in the New York Excelsior matches because I cannot. Right now, it feels like they are the team that is having the worst time of the flex support experience on main support, like the flex support experiment. So I'm really interested to see, like, because they were playing against a pretty good team with Shock, a very good team, I should say, and then also a really Papige team of Titans currently. And if they don't clearly win, then they're at risk, unless Titans have like a really good week, which is possible. But like, I think they're at risk there.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Houston OutLULs, I think. Who do they play against again? Isn't it
Shock and Florida?
Shock and Florida Mayhem, yeah.
Those are good matches, yeah.
I feel like, you've got where Houston would currently be ranked in your head. They've got Shock above them, so they have an opportunity to punch up. And then they have Florida below them, who are also a team that's trying to get some big wins. Plus, they're a team that really hasn't shown like too much meta diversity, I suppose you could say. So I think there's a lot of big questions there that are going to be fun to get answered.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Shock, of course, to see what Shock does against Houston, but I agree with Houston OutLULs. If they start playing Piggy on tank and then show like Dante playing Tracer next to like Merit Soldier or like whatever, they can do whatever. They can do so many different things. I just want to see what Houston OutLULs does.
And now it's time, of course, for our most favorite segment of the week, one which, like a child, Bren has completely abandoned at the doorstep of Plat chat. It's Bren's player of the week. He's currently in the UK. I don't know how much Overwatch League he was even able to watch. It's not on a particularly favorable time zone for him. So I'm going to give the honors to the group here. Who do you think Bren would have gone for this week if he was to pick a player of the week? He likes the silliness. He does like the silliness. He might have given it to like Gunba for cheating or something.
I think his European cope would immediately pick Hottie.
That's another one I was thinking of as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Hadi did have a really good performance compared to what he was able to demonstrate last year. Like last year, Hadi it just felt like a liability. He wasn't able to get much done, playing on super high ping the entire time. He's just had he just feels like he's having fun swinging a hammer at people this week.
He was a really nice guy as well. We talked to him going into the pre-match interview. He's a really nice guy. Yeah, it was kind of funny. So I don't know. I'm down for Hadi. I think that it's not coming home stuff to Massa. Bren would appreciate that. So I'm down for the chatty.
I also, knowing Bren, I could also totally see him go for someone like Lastro. Just like completely out of left field, and it's just like he's a really nice guy, and like people didn't really talk about him going into the season, but his main support is looking really good. And,
have you seen that the Chinese nickname for Lastro is like a phrase that you say bigger dicker?
It's like phonetically sounds like big dick, but it doesn't really mean it. But yeah, phonetically sounds like big dick.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Fantastic. That relies on my intense knowledge of Mandarin to be able to translate that.
Can't read that, but
snippet. Definitely didn't steal that from somebody else. There you go. Bren's play of the week. Then I'm going to give it to Hadi because it is coming home. It's fucking coming home. What is this?
Named champion of the earth.
Wow.
Dude, this is what Bren would do. He would go to BBC Science and then just click on a random topic and be like,
This is levels of narcissism, or not narcissism necessarily, but unbelievable hyperbole in your title that is only known by Huck, the president of gaming. You have the president of gaming and the champion of the earth. These are like similarly unbelievable titles. There you go.
Well, it's good. Yeah.
There you go.
I think it's nice. It's nice. Well
champion of the earth.
Champion of the earth, Sir David Attenborough. He is a fucking legend, though. And I'm sure he would appreciate Hadi as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, that does it for episode 128. We've got 129 heading at you next week, thick and fast. There's going to be more gameplay, I'm sure, and Avast will be doing some co-streaming. Jonathan may or may not be involved in the regular broadcast. Who knows? Just a shrug from him over there.
I don't know. I'm in isolation. I'm being detained. We'll have to see.
Yep. Well, Sag, but also... gets to just chill on the co-streams, which is the easiest job he's ever done. Had a paper round when he was 12. Easier than that, doing a co-stream. Yeah. All right, we'll see you for episode 129. Bye-bye. Hit the red button.